And we're live. Hi, everybody. Hey, chat room. Hello, everybody. It is time today for the 220-1002 Core 2 A Plus study group. All right, we do not need the podcast intro. That can go over here. Not sure why I still need the script, but there it is. Let's get this ready to go. That sure is bright. Let's turn it down a little bit. Not that much. We've got all questions in the first hour from the 220-1002 exam objectives. And then in the second hour, I'll take questions from the chat room. We'll just open it up. It's just open Q&A. You can ask anything you'd like in the second hour. I don't know if I would answer anything in the second hour, but I'll certainly take your question. Oh, let's pop out the chat. I can't see you way over there. Let's pop it out. Pop that over here. I'll stick it over there. Stick this over here. Yep, that's exactly what I want. That all looks so good. Okay. I think we're in pretty good shape. Let's check down here. Recordings are going. We are live on the air here. That is recording out on the YouTube side. All the stats look very good. I don't seem to be throwing any weird characters out there, so that's good. I love it. Well, hi, chat room. Welcome, welcome, welcome. Hello, Egypt. Hello, Ghana. The international folks have arrived and are ready, and we are doing it. February. Yep, that all looks good. I think I'm in pretty good shape here. I think I just need to, we are starting at the top of the hour, so we've got another 6.5 minutes. 6.5 minutes. Reg's in the chat room taking your test at 2:30 today. Best of luck. Hello, Floridians in Fort Pierce. Welcome. Melbourne in Florida is here. It's Melbourne. Melbourne. How y'all doing in Melbourne? Maryland, Oklahoma. Casey Mo, welcome. Good to have you here. Hello, Iran. There's folks checking in from all over the world. Hey, Philly, how y'all doing? Or I guess you all. Hello, Las Vegas in Canada, and St. Louis and Cincinnati and Jackson, Michigan. Brazil, welcome. Prescott, Arizona. Good to have you, everyone here. Hello, Poland and SoCal. We got about 5 minutes until we get started. Get these questions ramped up. I went through these questions and thought, well, maybe these will be harder. Maybe these will be more difficult. Do I have the right dates on here? I do. Everything looks good here. It has been crazy time here in the studio, because I've been working on the new A+, which is not even close to coming out. So we got a lot of time. We'll talk more about that as we get started here. We got a lot of time before we get through that. There's our 5-minute warning right there. That's beautiful. Hello, West Texas, Alabama, Zambia, Miami. Good to have you here. Old school is Miami. They said we're down in Miami. Don't hear many folks talk about Miami as Miami anymore, and probably good that way. Traverse City, Michigan, thanks for being here. Hello, Washington State and Houston in South Africa. Folks are checking in. So good to have you here. Does the new A+ test differ from the 1001, 1002? Well, I'm currently not in a position to talk about specifics, because all of the new exam objectives are currently under a non-disclosure, if you will. I think I'm pretty much not able to say anything about it right now, other than there will be a new one, it's sometime this year, somewhere in there. It takes, once an exam is released, it takes a long time for study materials to hit the street. So there will be some on the first day available, but you tend to get the more fleshed out materials as time goes on. And you're really going to have a pretty good choice is because you really have to think about what you are going to bring to this. It is one of these where there's a lot that's the same. Well, I can't talk about details of this, but as soon as they put out the newest exam, it just takes time. You're going to take 3 to 6 months to have some choices, because that's what you really need, are choices in your study materials. I will certainly have some, but I don't know if all of them will be ready on day one. It takes months to build a good training course. The ones you see early, you kind of have to question whether that's really something that's good or not. So if you get a cert in 1001, 1002, will it be okay if a new exam comes? If you get a cert, it's not in a certain version. The exams have versions so that you can keep track of when the exams change. Once you are certified, certification doesn't have a version. All that's important is that you're A+ certified. So they could change, after you get A+ certified, they could change the exam every day if they wanted to a new version. Wouldn't affect you. You're certified already. So you could pass both the 1001 and the 1002 exam on the last day it's offered, on the retirement day, and you could get certified. I don't recommend doing that, but you could earn your certification on that last available possible day for that exam version, and you will be certified for 3 years. And then at that point, it doesn't matter what happens to the exams. So, am I officially in partnership with CompTIA? I am, quote unquote, a CompTIA partner. What that really allows me to do is to sell you vouchers at a discount. So there's no sharing of content. I'm not building or creating anything for CompTIA. They're just allowing me to resell vouchers at a discount. That's all. There's a little bit more to it, but in my use in practical terms for what I am in this scenario is pretty much just someone who is reselling vouchers. So that's what that's about. We got a lot going on. We got a minute to go, but I'm very pleased that things in this first part of the year are just moving straight ahead. Would there ever be a video on creating a WIM using DISM? Yeah, I have a Windows 7, a configuring Windows 7 course back on the YouTube somewhere. But you can look on my channel for the 70-680 certification course. And there's tons of WIM and DISM and remote deployment, and there's a lot of that in there. When will the N10007 retire? It retires in June. I want to say the last day of June. Don't hold me to that, but it is in June. Can I get your practice test questions in Barnes & Noble? You cannot. You can't get my materials anywhere but on my website. It is an exclusive item. And with that, it's top of the hour, everybody. Let's go. We'll come back to questions in the second hour. But in the meantime, let's get this set up. That's not it. Let's get that set up. That's more like it. Let's get that playing. Does that look good? Yes, it does. All right. Let's do a live stream, everybody. Here we go. Hello, everyone. Welcome to the February 2022 Professor Messer A+ Study Group. This is our 220-1002, or what we call our Core 2 A+ Study Group, specific to those the 220-1002 CompTIA exam objectives. There's a lot to talk about today. I've got plenty of questions for you that come directly from the CompTIA exam objectives. Thank you for joining us. In this first hour, I will be asking you questions from those objectives. And in the second hour, I'm going to just open up the chat room and we'll just do some Q&A. We did a little bit there in the pre-show. We'll do a lot more in the after show, if you will. We've got a lot to go through today. You'll be focusing on answering questions live if you are here live on the stream. Hello, chat room. Thanks for joining us live. So for those of you that are here live on the chat, you can pop open a new browser window and browse over to professormesser.com/QA. That will take you to a question that's waiting for you on the screen right now. There's also an app you can get. You can go to your favorite app store and get the Socrative student app. It's a free app, doesn't cost you a thing. And if you use that app, it will ask you for a chat or a room name, not really a chat room name, more of a room name. And the room name is Professor Messer, ProfessorMesser, all one word. Make sure that you spell that correctly so that you can see the question that will be waiting for you. And the question that's there is what we call our rewind question, because it is a question that we had last month that I put as the first one so we can make sure that everybody can get in and answer those questions okay. And if you do that, the question that's waiting for you is, which of the following scripting methods would be the best choice for managing Windows Server? Would that be PowerShell, JavaScript, Shell Script, Python, or Batch File? Which of the following scripting methods would be the best choice for managing Windows Server? Would it be PowerShell, JavaScript, Shell Script, Python, or Batch File? As always, the rules that we have when answering these questions, if you're here live, is to go to professormesser.com/QA. That's the link that's right there on your screen. Please do not answer in the chat room. Please do not put any hints in the chat room. We're going to plug it in on that link, lock in your answer at professormesser.com/QA, and we'll come back to that question in just a bit. There is so much happening on this side. We're so glad that we can take some time, do some live streams, do some fun Q&A, answer some questions. It's always good to have these events, and we love doing them. When we're not here, you can, of course, visit our YouTube page, professormesser.com/YouTube. All of my training videos are available to watch there. There's no registration. There's no fee. Someone sent me an email this morning and said, I watched a video and it was 15 minutes. Why don't you release all of them? Well, I do. Every single video is released. It's all out there. And you can always come to my website to get an indexed. I also have playlists on my YouTube channel as well. There's also pop quiz questions every day for A+. You can find them on Twitter at professormesser.com/Twitter. And there's also an Instagram version of that includes a pretty picture, because who doesn't want that with your Q&A? At professormesser.com/Instagram. I also have hashtags with both of those, so you can search for specific types of questions for exams if that's what you would like to do. Let's talk about these exams. The 221,001 and 221,002 were released on January the 15th, 2019. Now, that's just over 3 years ago at this point. And for those of you familiar with CompTIA, you know that they tend to update their exams every 3 years. But now 3 years has come and gone, and the exam is not updated. I wonder what may have happened in the world to slow things down. Well, I would expect probably, over the coming months, we will have more information about when a new version of exams could possibly be released. But I will tell you, knowing where we are today, that the current set of exams are going to be around until at least August. So if you are currently studying for your A+, or you're starting the process of studying for your A+ exams, you've got plenty of time, as long as you're able to pass both of those exams by August of 2022. That's the estimate. Now, we don't have official dates yet, but I do expect that we'll be hearing probably very soon from CompTIA. Maybe on the next study group we do next month, we'll have more information for you. The exam itself, 2 separate exams, the 221,001 and the 221,002. Today we're going to focus on the 221,002. That exam you have to score 700 on a scale from 100 to 900. It's an odd scale. It's an odd grading system. We don't know exactly the details of how things are graded. CompTIA keeps those things private. So all we really know is that we need to do the best we can so that we can score over a 700 on our 221,002. There's a number of topics we'll be discussing today. There's 4 separate domains from the 221,002, and we will be talking today specifically about operating systems, security, software troubleshooting, and operational procedures. Plenty to go through there. So all of those topics we will be discussing as we go through all of the topics for this. So keep that in mind as we're going through the first hour and all the live Q&A. There are also free questions on my website. We call these the Take 10 Challenge because there are sections of 10 questions. You can find those on my site for A+, for Network Plus, or for Security Plus. Go to ProfessorMesser.com/take10. I also have a video replay of this live stream available immediately afterwards. There's also an audio-only replay available in podcast form. You can find that on my website at ProfessorMesser.com/podcast. Have a look at the A+, the Network Plus, and the Security Plus study groups are all available from that podcast link. If you go to YouTube after we're done to watch the video replay, you'll notice about a day later that my marketing manager, Lori, has gone through the entire video and put timestamps of everything. This is fantastic when you're trying to find exactly a question and answer or something that may have come up in the after show. Lori's watching this replay. Everybody say hi to Lori. She's watching the chat go by on the replay of the chat as well. She's probably watching at 1.5 or 2 times and getting the timestamps down. And we all do appreciate what she's doing. You can go back years and take advantage of all of this work she has put into these timestamps. It really is quite remarkable. Well, when we're not doing live streams, we always have our chat going 24/7 on the website. You can find us in our Discord channel. The Discord is available at ProfessorMesser.com/Discord. And we're always there. You can also find an icon at the upper right of my website that will take you there. That's a great way to chat with us and other people who are studying for their exams, all available on our online 24/7 community. We also, on our website, provide discounted vouchers if you live in the U.S., Canada, and U.S. territories. You can find that at ProfessorMesser.com/vouchers. Those free vouchers the vouchers aren't free, but if you get a voucher from my site, by the way, which is already discounted, you aren't paying full price for a voucher, you're getting a discount. So don't buy your vouchers on the Pearson VUE website. You're paying 100% of the cost. Get a discount. I do throw in free a copy of my Exam Hacks ebook. This is a set of tips, tricks that can get you through the study and the actual exam process. May give you some tips that can help you on the exam to score a few extra points, and that might be all the difference. You only get that free Exam Hacks ebook if you purchase the voucher on my site. Go to ProfessorMesser.com/vouchers. Let's talk about that question we had earlier. Which of the following scripting methods would be the best choice for managing Windows Server? Would it be PowerShell, JavaScript, Shell Script, Python, or Batch File? And let's look at our results. We can see that 80% of you, 80, say PowerShell. 10% said Shell Script, and then basically a 3-way tie for third between JavaScript, Python, and Batch File at 3 and 4% of the options. Well, those of you that have used Windows Server before or have had to integrate some type of automation into the Windows ecosystem, you know that PowerShell is phenomenal for this. PowerShell is what everybody uses to do detailed automation of practically anything in Windows. This particular shell has access to the Windows operating system and some important hooks associated with the Windows operating system. So this is absolutely what you would use if you were on a Windows environment and you were wanting to script things. This is not the only choice, of course. You could have used a batch file. You could have used Python, but those types of scripting systems are not designed specifically for Windows. They're a little more generic. If you wanted to find the perfect scripting environment for Windows, it probably would be PowerShell. This is a real key or real important part of this is understanding what you're able to do on PowerShell. And if you become very, very good in PowerShell, you can pretty much go anywhere you would like. It is a very powerful tool in a Windows environment. And that's why I always tell people, if you wanted to take things to the next level with what you're doing in your career, automation will certainly open a lot of doors for you. And automation in Windows means that you're becoming a PowerShell expert. Automation in perhaps Linux and other operating systems, Python is incredibly popular. So if you know one or even both of those, that can be very, very powerful, very, very useful. Windows PowerShell is the right answer. If you answered a PowerShell, 81% of you got that right. I mentioned shell scripts already. Actually, I mentioned batch files and Python that can run in Windows, but they wouldn't be the best choice for managing Windows Server. Shell scripts are commonly associated with Linux or Unix, maybe Mac OS as well. JavaScript is a scripting language that commonly runs inside of your browser. So for something like Windows Server, 81% of you are spot on. Absolutely, it's PowerShell. That's what you should be doing, and that is the right answer. Hopefully, you remembered some of those things that we talked about when we were going through the questions we had last month. So we'll have some new ones now to be able to work through this. Let's do some new questions. And some of you are aware that when we go to new questions, that the very first new question is one that I like to provide as a performance-based question. If you haven't taken a CompTIA exam before, you may not even be familiar with this, that most people think the exam is multiple choice, like the questions we have here. Multiple choice question that asks you a question and then gives you different options to choose from for an answer. But CompTIA doesn't give you all multiple choice. The first handful of questions you get on your exam are going to be performance-based questions. Performance-based questions are effectively anything but multiple choice. They might be fill in the blank. They might be a matching question. It might be a drag and drop question. They might put you at a Windows prompt and ask you to perform a function. They might put you at a command prompt and ask you to perform a particular task. You never know exactly what you're going to be getting. So I have a question for you today that is the performance-based question. Although you don't know what you're getting on performance-based, all of the topics for the performance-based questions all come from the CompTIA exam objectives. So nothing's going to be a surprise. They're just changing the way that they provide the question to you. The question that we have is the one here that says match the Windows utility to the description. And you can see here that I have 7 different Windows utilities, and then I have 4 different descriptions to choose from. So what I have in this list is the 7 Windows utilities. And for those of you listening in on the podcast side, let me step through each one of those. The first is check disk, CD, DISM, Xcopy, SFC, GP update, and MKDIR. Those are the 7 Windows utilities. Now I have 4 descriptions, so you can see with only 4 descriptions, I'm only going to be matching 4 of these. There will be 3 left over at the end of this. So the first is, A is check the integrity of critical system files, duplicate files across different Windows shares, locate logical errors in a file system, and update the password policy on company computers. So you've got quite a few different options there. I want you to look at all 4 of those descriptions and match 4 of the Windows utilities to those. Of course, always please no answers in the chat room. Please no hints in the chat room. Instead, you want to go to the link that's on your screen. Go to professormesser.com/QA and lock this in. If you think they are already in the order that you would find, you would put A1, B2, C3, and D4, and you'd be done. That is not, I don't think, how that particular piece goes. So that's the real key, is figuring out what the links are between those. We'll have to find out what they might be. A, B, C, and D. See if you can lock in and match those Windows utilities. We have check disk, CD, DISM, Xcopy, SFC, GP update, and MKDIR. We want to check the integrity of critical system files, duplicate files across different Windows shares, locate logical errors in a file system, and update the password policy on company computers. In the chat room, CID Green with the $25 super chat coming off the top rope, CID. CID writes, I passed my Core 2A+, congratulations, and I'm going to start CCNA next. Can you recommend some good study materials similar to your format? Thanks for all you do. Well, that's a kind of a normal path I find. People start with A+, and then they might go to CCNA, they might go to Network Plus, they might go Security Plus, they might get a Microsoft certification. A+ is such a great jumping off point to other technologies. CCNA, though, I don't have a lot of familiarity with what's out there with CCNA. It's been a while since I took my CCNA exams. It is not one that I've also gone out and done a lot of studies as to what people are offering. So I quite literally only have time to build my content, publish my content, and then the day is over. So unfortunately, I have not done a lot of looking around to see what people are offering on the CCNA side. But I know there's a very good CCNA study group that's available on Reddit. That might be a good place to stop by and see what types of tools they are using for their CCNA. I wish I could give you a bit more direction, but I've just not even looked at them. There's so many different training courses out there, and there's just so little bit of time in the day. So hopefully that's one that might, some folks in the chat room given some recommendations, and that Reddit, the subreddit is a great place to go for CCNA as well. Let's now see if we can match these Windows utilities. We've got 7 different Windows utilities. Let's start with check disk. I'm going to sort of do this backwards to what we had on the screen. But check disk matches with C, locate logical errors in a file system. I'll talk about why I chose check disk in just a moment. But if you're trying to find a logical error in a file system, this is the way to do it. There's a directory, an index, if you will, that's on your system that knows where all of the different files and pieces of files are located on your storage drive. Well, that index has to be exactly correct to know where all the files are. And occasionally, a problem might occur where a file might be out on the drive and there's no index for it, or there might be an index for a file and the file isn't actually there. Check disk will straighten all of these things out. They'll get everything organized again and make sure that the index matches where all of the files happen to be located. The next on our list was CD. That is change directory. And the change directory command, I did not give any type of description for change directory. So that's one that did not have an answer. So if you see CD, that is one that is by itself, the change directory command. I did not have it match any of those descriptions. Another command that did not match any descriptions is DISM. That is managing the Windows imaging format, or the WIM files. The DISM and other utilities for managing WIM files are all commonly used for deployment of Windows, but they can also be used for virtualization of Windows, a very powerful and very useful format. So knowing where all these utilities are and where they go can be a very useful and very important thing. Fourth on our list was Xcopy. Xcopy did have a match. It matched with letter B, duplicate files across different Windows shares. And Xcopy, there's lots of ways to duplicate files between one place or another. I could just use the copy command. That's an easy way to do it. I could use the Xcopy command, which has a few extra features in it, a little bit more feature-rich than the copy command. And then if you've watched the videos, you know there's a robocopy command, which is not about robots. It means robust copy. Robocopy is kind of takes it to the next level because it has more of an integration into NTFS. It has a lot more capabilities for logging. It allows you to start a file transfer, and if the transfer gets interrupted for some reason, like your network goes down, and then the network comes back, it will not have to restart from the beginning. It can just pick up where it left off. So there's all kinds of interesting and very advanced features in Robocopy. Robocopy wasn't an option, though. The only one that really met with that was Xcopy, and that matches B, duplicate files across Windows shares. One that matched answer A, which was check the integrity of critical system files, is SFC. And this is where I see a lot of people get confused over what SFC can do versus what check disk can do. SFC is designed to check the integrity of critical system files, such as your core operating system files. If your machine was infected with malware, it may go into critical, important, and necessary Windows system files and make changes to those files, or just delete them or make them something else, make changes to those files. One way that you can revert those changes or copy back a known good version of those critical Windows system files is to use SFC. So SFC becomes a very powerful tool for recovering from malware. It also becomes a very useful tool just to make sure that your Windows system has a good foundation, that you are starting a system that already has been checked, all the files are legitimate, and now we can start Windows up. That's a little bit different than the check disk. Check disk is checking the index. Check disk just wants to make sure everything is in the right place. But check disk doesn't have any idea of a file and whether it might have been changed. Has no clue if malware happens to have changed anything. So in this case, you have to keep in mind that check disk is about the index. SFC is about the integrity of the files themselves. That's the real key between those two. Next on our list is GP update. That matches answer D. Update the password policy on company computers if you're working with something associated with rolling out a group policy. And you want that group policy to apply to everybody's system. When you first set the group policy, it goes and is placed into your Active Directory server, but users' workstations are not constantly checking in to see if there's any new group policies. In most cases, group policies, you have to log out as the user and log back in. Before you do that, you may want to run a GP update or force an update on the user's workstation so that it is forced to go out to the Active Directory server, pull down that latest set of group policies, and then apply those to the system. So that would be D, update the password policy on company computers. It's a very common group policy. Last on our list is the mkdir command, which stands for make directory. If you're creating a directory, creating a folder on your system, you would use the mkdir or abbreviated just MD at the command line, and that would be able to update and create that directory on your system. Very important to have those utilities. So the four different descriptions: locating logical errors in a file system is check disk. Duplicating files across different Windows shares is xcopy. Checking the integrity of critical system files is SFC, or the system file checker. And updating the password policy on company computers, updating really any group policy on company computers, is GP update. I didn't want to put group policy in the description because I think that would have given it away. But I think we got just enough there to give you a feel of what you would choose between all of the other options that were on your screen. Hopefully you're familiar with some of these Windows options, these Windows utilities. All of these are listed in the CompTIA exam objectives, and there's a lot more. So make sure you download a copy of the exam objectives and refer back to those so you know exactly which utilities you should be familiar with when you go in to sit for your exam. Before we go past this performance-based question, do some more multiple choice, I want to recognize Troopers Gaming in the chat room with the €10 super chat, or £10 super chat, sorry. Troopers writes, "Hi, Prof." Hi. "I've been building my own PCs for about a decade. Would you suggest Fundamentals Plus or straight to A Plus certification? I have good experience in hardware, but not a lot of networking. Thanks." The ITF, IT Fundamentals Plus, is a certification offered by CompTIA. You don't hear me talk much about ITF Plus. It is really designed to be a precursor or something you would take prior to jumping into A+. If you're somebody who's never touched computers before, you're looking down and wondering, what's this strange thing with all the keys on it, then maybe ITF Plus is for you. But if you're somebody you've already worked with computers, you're familiar with the login process, you use applications on these systems, you can browse around the internet, ITF Plus may be a little bit further back than what you need. You might want to jump right into A+. The other question you want to think about is whether an employer is looking for ITF Plus. And if you find that a lot of employers are, then maybe that would be a good option. But I find that most employers are starting off on A+. Check the employment job listings in your area. I think that would be a good place to make a determination on which one perhaps is more popular and might provide you with more value. Ultimately, I think that's what we all worry about. We're trying to pick a cert, which one gives us the most value. Let's do some more questions. And also, troopers, thank you for the 10-pound super chat. We sure appreciate it. Let's do another multiple choice based question. This is our first new multiple choice based question of the day, and it asks, a Windows 10 computer is starting in safe mode. Which of the following would be the best next troubleshooting step? Should we clear the BIOS configuration, run startup repair, start in VGA mode, check the reliability monitor, or disable all startup apps? A Windows 10 computer is starting in safe mode. Which of the following would be the best next troubleshooting step? Would that be to clear the BIOS config, run startup repair, start in VGA mode, check reliability monitor, or disable all startup apps? If you think you know the answer, please do not answer in the chat room. Instead, you want to go to ProfessorMester.com/QA, that link that's right there on your screen, and lock in your answer. I see people locking it in right now. This is a good question because or at least I think it's a good question, because many of these things you might do during the process of troubleshooting this issue. But that wasn't the question. The question asked, which of the following would be the best next troubleshooting step? And we'll talk about what I think this order of importance would be when we talk about the answers. D1 Who Live in the chat room with a $5 super chat. Thank you, D1. D1 writes, thanks, Professor. You helped me pass my A+. Congratulations on your A+, which is perhaps much more important. That's great to hear. Thank you for also the super chat. For those of you who haven't seen the super chat feature, it's part of the YouTube that allows you to effectively just donate to content creators that are on the site. It's not something that's required to ask a question here, but I absolutely appreciate it. It does help keep the lights on. At the end of the day, they do like me paying for the lights to be on. So you're a big part of that. So thank you so much for doing that. And I appreciate the super chat. Congratulations on your A+. Let's see if we know what the answer is for this question. The question again, a Windows 10 computer is starting in safe mode. Which of the following would be the best next troubleshooting step? Would it be clear the BIOS configuration, run startup repair, start in VGA mode, check reliability monitor, or disable all startup apps? What did you answer? 63% of you said run startup repair. 20% of you said disable all startup apps. And then you've got 8% that said check reliability monitor, 5% said start in VGA mode, and 3% said clear the BIOS configuration. So single digits for all of those. This is one that is an annoying problem. You turn on the computer, and instead of getting your normal login with the normal desktop, you get safe mode. Safe mode is a mode that Windows starts in, and it very clearly tells you you are running in safe mode. The background wallpaper says safe mode all over it. And it is a version of Windows. It looks and feels like Windows, but it's not a completely functional version of Windows. It's just enough for Windows to get started. So that is obviously not the best possible situation. Something is not working right with the Windows startup process that Windows has recognized. This is not what we would like. We need to at least get started, though. So perhaps if we can provide something like a Windows desktop that would give you just enough to get to a command prompt, to get to the services, to get to the startup, maybe you can figure out what's going on. And this is one of those situations where you do need to spend some time troubleshooting why this is happening. Safe mode happens because Windows is not working properly. And when Windows isn't working properly, we can really focus our efforts on the Windows operating system rather than applications that we may have installed separately. So we don't have to go through trying to figure out what apps may be working or not working. Instead, we should have Windows have a look at its own diagnostics and begin looking through all of its core system files, have it run through a test and make sure it's able to read and write to its registry settings. It goes through a whole set of steps to do this. When it runs, startup repair. This is what the startup repair screen looks like when it's running. It says that we're going to try to fix these. In fact, it says if problems are found, startup repair will fix them automatically. Your computer might restart several times during this process. No changes will be made to your personal files or information. This might take several minutes. This will take several minutes. I don't know why they say might. They should say this will absolutely take you several minutes to go through this. Very often it does. And it just sits there and just goes through, and you'll watch the marker go across the screen constantly. And eventually it's going to find where that problem is, ideally. It's going to correct the issue, restart your computer, and now safe mode doesn't happen anymore. That's the best scenario. Doesn't always work that way, but that should really be your first step when troubleshooting something like this, because if Windows can fix it automatically, then you're good. You don't have to do anything else with the system. We had some other options here. 64% of you did say run startup repair. 19% said disable all startup apps. But as I mentioned, the safe mode happens because of what Windows is doing, not because of what your startup apps are doing. Windows starts in safe mode. Your apps haven't even started yet when Windows starts up in safe mode. So disabling startup apps is probably not going to help you very much. So that would not be the best next troubleshooting step. 8% of you said check reliability monitor. Reliability monitor is great for viewing and identifying where problems might be on your system, but we already know we have a problem. We're in safe mode. There's no question a problem exists. Before going into event viewer, before going into reliability monitor, before digging down into the details of what's happening, you may be able to solve this problem very easily by simply running startup repair. So although you might get more insight into the problem and lot more documentation by going to something like reliability monitor or like event viewer, it's not going to really help you get things up and running again. Running startup repair will probably take care of everything for you right there. The clear the BIOS configuration and start in VGA mode are both options that don't help anything related to a safe mode. The BIOS configuration is not causing your safe mode problem, and the video display that you have would not cause it to go into safe mode either. The best option on this screen, the one that I would choose first, the one you probably should choose first as well, is to run startup repair. That is answer B. 64% of you got that one absolutely right. Well done. Let's do another one. I've got another multiple choice question right here. This question asks, a technician is troubleshooting from the command line of a remote Linux server. Which of the following is most likely in use? Is it RDP, SFC, PowerShell, VBScript, or SSH? A technician is troubleshooting from the command line of a remote Linux server. Which of the following is most likely in use? Is it RDP, SFC, PowerShell, VBScript, or SSH? If you think you know the answer, go to that link, professormesser.com/QA, and lock in your answer. See if you know what it happens to be. This is one, hopefully you'll be in this position where you are troubleshooting the command line of a remote Linux server. I do this a lot because I'm constantly connecting out to professormessers.com servers. There's a number of servers that run the website. I'm constantly connecting out to those devices to check on files, to look at log files, to modify information, to update a configuration. What am I using to do that? What am I using to troubleshoot from the command line of that remote Linux server? Lock in your answer by going to professormesser.com/QA. That's the best hint I can give you, which really wasn't a hint at all. All I was doing is giving you a longer version of the question. There weren't any hints in there. There was nothing in there to tell you what was going on, but maybe it gave you some context. And maybe this is something you've done before. This might be a gimme. You might get free points on this one. See if you know. Lock in your answer. Go to professormesser.com/QA. See what it happens to be. There were a number of people, that last question was safe mode, that were recommending violence in the chat room. I'm not above that. There have been times when I've been kind of violent with my computer. As it turns out, it doesn't actually fix anything, though. And although I thought it would make me feel better, it didn't really do that either. So I would not recommend using any type of percussive type of control to resolve any issues with safe mode. It's not going to help you. Not going to work so much. Let's see how you did with this question. This question asked about a technician who's troubleshooting from the command line of a remote Linux server. Which of the following is most likely in use? Is it RDP, SFC, PowerShell, VBScript, or SSH? How did we answer on this one? 74% of you say SSH is what you would choose. 15% of you said RDP is what you should use. That is the way you would break this down. You've got 9% that said VBScript, and then a tie for fourth at 1% apiece between SFC and PowerShell. Well, if you're on a Linux server and you're at the command line, I hope you are using SSH. SSH stands for Secure Shell. Secure Shell is a terminal type screen, but all of the communication being sent across the network for this terminal screen is all encrypted. That's the secure part of Secure Shell. So it looks like Telnet. It looks like your local terminal screen. It looks as if you're working on your local machine, but really you are operating a terminal screen that's located on a different computer. Very nice to have. You will use it constantly for connecting to switches, routers, firewalls, Linux machines, Windows machines, other operating systems that you may have in your systems and your setup on your network. The beauty of this is that you're at the command line. It doesn't require a lot of bandwidth, which is great if you're over a very small bandwidth connection. You're over a dial-up line. You're over a non-terrestrial link. Having SSH and low bandwidth is useful. And the second part is the security. It's making sure that nothing you're typing in, none of the usernames or passwords you're typing in, can be captured and somehow seen or used by a third party. So it's very secure. And this is the standard for anyone who's doing terminal communication across the network. You would use Secure Shell or SSH. And indeed, 74% of you say, that's what I would have chosen as well, SSH. Now, 14% of you chose RDP. This is the Remote Desktop Protocol, which is great for connecting to a third-party device and viewing desktop information or sharing the desktop of that remote device. In this particular case, we're not sharing the desktop. We're troubleshooting from the command line of a remote Linux server. Well, first, a remote Linux server by default does not run Remote Desktop Protocol because that tends to be a very Microsoft-centric protocol. So not something you would commonly see on Linux. And Remote Desktop Protocol shares the entire desktop. It is not used just for command lines. So that is not what you would use, although 14% of you chose RDP, not the best choice in this particular situation. 9% said VBScript. VBScript is the Visual Basic Scripting, very commonly used for Windows-based applications for automation. That doesn't really help you for managing the command line at a remote Linux device. Not going to help you there either. 1% for SFC, the System File Checker. We talked about SFC in the very first performance-based question we did that checks all of the core critical system files on your computer. That does nothing to do with a command line of remote Linux server. And then you have PowerShell. We talked about PowerShell as well being a great scripting option for Windows. This is command line of remote Linux server. That doesn't fit at all. The best option was indeed option E, SSH. 74% of you got that one absolutely correct. That's a great one to choose if you're doing almost anything across the network and needing that command line. Well, as we've already seen, there are a lot of topics on the A+ exam, both the A+ Core 1 and the A+ Core 2. You have, for both of my A+ courses, you have a total of 137 videos. Have you used all those yet? Watch through them all. 18 hours and 29 minutes worth of content. That's a lot of videos. I realize that. Although I make the videos to be very efficient, this is really a lot of content to go through. So one of the things I'm hoping that you'll take advantage of are my course notes. These course notes are a very good way to really encapsulate and view all of the critical information from every single one of my videos. This is the physical printed version of the course notes, which are bound and are in full living color. The course notes themselves are also in a digital format as well. There's the digital PDF. Let's have a look through some of the pages in here. There's upgrade charts. There's information on installing Windows. There's command line information is in here. All of the text from the videos. It goes on and on and on. How many pages total in this? There are 50 pages of notes that all are specific to all of my videos. They have all of the text from my videos, all of the same format from the videos, and the same order as the videos, all of these course notes. If you purchase a physical edition, I, of course, ship this to you, but I will give you the digital version for free so you can have something to reference while you're waiting for that to arrive in the mail, and I'll ship those anywhere in the world. Usually within the U.S., it'll get to you in about a week. It tends to change depending on weather and depending on what's going on in the world. Sometimes shipping is not as reliable these days as what we would like. But if you're outside the United States, well, we never know. It tends to take 2 or 3 weeks, usually, unless you run into a problem with customs. And these days, we do run into a lot of problems with customs. Have a look at those. If you buy both of them at the same time, you also save a little bit of money. There's a discount for buying the combo. If you choose to purchase one, it will give you the option to buy the second one at a discounted price. Find out more about that at ProfessorMesser.com/1002 notes, or follow the pull down that is right at the top of the ProfessorMesser.com website. In the chat room, Barb, if you have the digital version, you're thinking that physical version is something I might like. Can I upgrade to that? Can I just pay the difference and get the physical? You absolutely can. Open up a help desk ticket on my site or from your member login, or simply send me a link from Contact Us that's on my site, and I will send you an upgrade coupon and instructions so that you're not having to purchase twice. You can just purchase the difference to get that physical version, and I'll send you instructions on how you can make that happen. Find out more about that at ProfessorMesser.com/1002 notes. It's also, by the way, a great way to help support the site, because every dollar there goes back into creating all of the new videos that are coming out, all of the live streams, and, as I've mentioned, keeping the lights on. Thank you for your purchase of those. Thank you for your support. And for everything you do to keep things running here. We really do appreciate it. Let's do some more Q&A. Got another one for you. A nice Windows Q&A that is asking, a Windows 10 administrator would like to modify the amount of virtual memory used by a device. Which of the following would provide this configuration? Would it be Defender, Devices and Printers, Performance Settings, BIOS Configuration, or File Explorer Options? A Windows 10 administrator would like to modify the amount of virtual memory used by a device. Which of the following would provide this configuration? Would it be Defender, Devices and Printers, Performance Settings, BIOS Configuration, or File Explorer Options? If you think you know the answer, please no answering in the chat room. Please go to ProfessorMesser.com/QA. Lock in your answer there. Question from Ken, have my notes been updated within the recent 3 years? My notes are specific to a version of the exam. So these notes are for the 220-1002, which is the current version of the CompTIA exam objectives. They have not updated or made any changes to those objectives since they were released. So these notes haven't had to be changed since that. They match all of the objectives from the 220-1002 and match them precisely. I use the exam objectives to build my notes and to build my videos. So it's a very specific version. Now, if CompTIA came out with a new version of the A+ exam, I would need to create a new version of course notes. So these are the current one. CompTIA has not announced anything new. You're not going to see any new A+ version. I won't say when, but there's no new version coming out. We got more that are happening. There's plenty of things going on with A+, and I think by this time next month we'll have a better idea of when the release might be. So that can give you that's a little bit of a clue, I guess, that we're still going to be talking about this next month. That might help. I have course notes available for A+, for Network+, and for Security+. So you can go out to my website and find all of those. And, of course, all of my study materials are updated to match the exam objectives from the latest series of exams, of course. That's exactly what we would do. Let's have a look at this question and see if we know the answer. This question asked, a Windows 10 administrator would like to modify the amount of virtual memory used by a device. Which of the following would provide this configuration? Would it be Defender, Devices and Printers, Performance Settings, BIOS Configuration, or File Explorer Options? 66% of you say Performance Settings contains the virtual memory configuration. 16% of you say the BIOS configuration. 12% said Devices and Printers. So we have double digits for 3 of these. That's a pretty good mix. 6% of you said File Explorer Options. Nobody said Defender. Nobody said Windows Defender. A critical piece of what we are doing in Windows these days. Well, if you're looking for virtual memory config, 66% of you said Performance Settings, and indeed the Performance Setting is exactly where you would find this. You can go to professormesser.com/QA to lock in those answers, and if you locked it in as C, Performance Settings, then you probably remember that it's in System Properties under the Advanced tab. There is an advanced option that you could choose, and you can change the option for, there it is, virtual memory, and you can make that change right here. Virtual memory on my machine was set up to be automatic. You can't see that because my head's in the way, but it says automatically manage the paging file size for all of the drives. Or you can uncheck that and specify manually what you would like the virtual memory settings to be. Very useful. This is one, and it will tell you right at the bottom what the minimum, the recommended, and the currently allocated numbers happen to be. So you can make a decision about how much virtual memory might be useful on your machine. If you're very low on storage space, this might be something that can help you free up storage space without having too much of an impact on the overall performance of your operating system. You'll have to try different settings to see what works for you. I think most of the time, leaving this clicked with automatically manage is the right answer. I think just leave it where it is and you'll be okay. But there may be certain corner cases where making modifications to that are going to be very, very useful. So just an idea of what you can do with those. Performance Settings is the right answer. If you were trying to find that on the screen, there it is. The automatically manage paging file for all drives, leaving that checked is really the right answer. That's what I would put, is make sure that's there. That is the right answer. Performance Settings, answer C. 68% of you chose that one. That is the correct answer. Now, 15% of you chose BIOS configuration. And although there are tons of settings inside of the BIOS, including options for enabling hardware-based virtualization in your CPU, those hardware-based virtualization settings are not related to virtual memory used by an operating system. Those are two different technologies. Make sure you're familiar with the difference between hardware-based virtualization in a CPU, which is primarily used for virtual machines, and virtual memory, which is used by your operating system to take files that are currently in memory, have them stored out onto a storage drive temporarily so that you can then use that memory for other things. Virtual memory, extremely useful. Devices and printers, not the best place to go to manage your virtual memory either. Virtual memory is not managed always in the devices and printers option. 11% of you chose that, but that does help you if you need to add or remove a device or add or remove a printer. It's not the best place to go to change the virtual memory settings. 6% of you said File Explorer options. And although File Explorer options give you options on how you can view files from the Explorer, it doesn't help you with virtual memory settings. And Defender, Windows Defender, specifically Windows Defender Antivirus, I think now it's called Microsoft Defender Antivirus. They keep changing the name, but we just tend to call it Windows Defender these days. Nobody chose that one. That is the security tools on your system that provides antivirus and anti-malware using Defender. Obviously, that has nothing to do with virtual memory. The best option here, the one that fits, is answer C, Performance Settings. 68% of you Got that one absolutely right. Let's do another question. Got more here. This next question asks, a Windows device is configured with Radius. Which of the following would describe this functionality? Is it encryption, backup, authentication, redundancy, or caching? A Windows device is configured with Radius. Which of the following would describe this functionality? Is it encryption, backup, authentication, redundancy, or caching? It's interesting. As you go through and answer this, remember, go to professormesser.com/QA to lock in your answer. Please no answers in the chat room. Please no hints in the chat room. One of the things that from the last question regarding Windows Defender, they do keep changing the name. And in fact, in the latest Windows version, it's really hard to even find the name Defender. They just put everything under the security, Windows security application to be able to do that. The Windows security application is a useful tool. Now, everything tends to be in one place. They're really consolidating everything together, but they still refer to it as the Defender antivirus in the Microsoft documentation. So although it doesn't say it on the screen, that's really what they're talking about, being able to work through this. See if you happen to know this one. This question about Radius is a good one. If you are watching this video for continuing education unit credit, then you want to go to the top or the bottom of the Professor Messer website. And on that top or bottom of the website, click the link that says Contact Us. In that Contact Us page, put your name, your email address. In the subject line, put February 2022 Core 2 A+ Study Group. And in the body of the message on a line by itself, put the super secret code word of the month, Radius. Radius is the super secret code word of the month. Now, if you go to there and do all of that, it will send me an email. And then about a week later, I send you back an email with a digital signature that says, you must have watched this. Here's your 1 hour of a continuing education unit credit specific to a webinar category. So it's pretty good to have all of those. This is an easy way to earn CEUs, although I realize a number of you are using CertMaster CE these days to be able to get enough CEUs to be able to renew. You don't have to worry about too much of that. All you have to do is go to my website, earn the CEU. I'll send you that. And if you're not using CertMaster CE, you can collect CEUs that way. Both are good ways to renew, but not everybody uses CertMaster. I realize that. So give you another option anyway. Let's see the answer in this one. This question asked, a Windows device is configured with Radius. Which of the following would describe this functionality? Is it encryption, backup, authentication, redundancy, or caching? And the results show us that 70% of you say that the Radius means authentication. 15% of you say Radius is for redundancy. We have 6% said backup, 5% said encryption, 4% said caching. That's effectively a three-way tie for third. So that is a good one to use if you are trying to figure out this Radius thing. That's a good place to start, is with the authentication. Interestingly enough, the A that is in Radius is the authentication. It's the remote authentication dial-in user service. This is one of those rare examples where knowing the terms in the acronym could possibly give you the answer to the question. So Radius is one of the ways that we use to authenticate systems or users onto the network. Allows you to use a centralized database, and instead of everybody having a different username and password on all of these different systems, they can use a single username and password that's synchronized across everything. Radius is a type of authentication system that allows you to do that. So if somebody's trying to connect to a router, they're trying to log into the VPN, they're trying to connect to a printer, you can have everything set up to authenticate using Radius. Normally in Windows, we just use Windows. Windows uses Kerberos to be able to provide its authentication method, but you're not always using Windows. And sometimes you have to be able to to have other operating systems authenticate with those same usernames and passwords, Radius is a great way to do that. Radius, the remote authentication dial-in user service. It might help you if you're trying to figure out ways to authenticate to your system. You can find out more about this on the 220-1002 exam, section 2.3 under wireless security. That's the video that talks all about these authentication methods. And authentication was the right answer. Answer C, 70% of you, 7-0, got that one absolutely right. It would not be redundancy. Redundancy would be RAID, the redundant array of independent disks. This is radius, spelled a little bit different, and a completely different type of technology. Redundancy is not used or associated with Radius. We've got the 6% of you that said backup. Radius doesn't do anything with backups either. Backup in Windows, backup in Linux, backup in other operating systems. You would use probably different utilities or some that are designed for the multi-platform to be able to do that. Radius doesn't provide any backup functionality. We have 5% of you that said encryption. By default, Radius does not have encryption enabled, so not something useful there either. And then 4% of you said caching. Radius is not used for caching either. It is purely used for authentication. It's in the name, the remote authentication dial-in user service. For those of you asking in the chat room, that's from section 2.3 under my video, wireless security. 2.3, wireless security. It matches the CompTIA exam objectives, also 2.3. So if you're trying to find where'd this come from, that's the section it came from the exam objectives as well. In the chat room, Frog Blog with the $10 super chat. Thank you so much. A+ certified as of last week. Wouldn't be possible without your videos and books. Thanks for what you do. Well, thank you for that. As I always say, I do the easy part. You're the one who actually has to take the exam. So congratulations on earning your A+. And thank you for the $10 super chat. We appreciate your support there as well. It's always good to hear when somebody passes the exams. See, it really does happen. People really do pass these exams and earn their A+ certification. And it's just what's fun to me is I think this is the beginning. You know, you've been working for months to be able to earn that certification, but I know there's a lot more great things that are about to happen. It just continues to be awesome in IT. You just continue to amazing things will continue throughout your career. I promise you that. It's an exciting field to be in, and congratulations on your new A+ certification. I know we're at the top of the hour, but let's do one more question, because why not? This next question asks, which of the following occurs during the malware remediation phase? Is it disable system restore, educate the end user, schedule scans, signature update, or quarantine system? Which of the following occurs during the malware remediation phase? Is it disable system restore, educate the end user, schedule scans, signature update, or quarantine system? Go to ProfessorMesser.com/QA. Lock in your answer. Please no answers in the chat room. Please no hints in the chat room. As a reminder, stick around. The second hour, I'm going to be taking questions from the chat room. Just anything you'd like to ask. It's Friday. Who knows what's going to happen? We don't often do these live streams on a Friday. So we'll take your questions as soon as we get to that after show section. Stick around for that. There's always something interesting happening in the after show. Almost always. Something interesting happening in the after show. Lock in your answer right now. Go to ProfessorMesser.com/QA. No looking at the malware remediation phase. No, don't do that. I'm going to take a sip of coffee so I can keep this party going. And there are a few questions that have come up in the chat room. We'll talk about some of those too. I'm kind of holding them or trying to make sure I remember them. So if I don't mention it, feel free to mention it again when we get into the after show. Let's see how you did. Not a lot of people answering this one fast, are they? We can all watch the numbers sort of accumulate as people are locking in their answer. Let's see how you did. The question is, which of the following occurs during the malware remediation phase? Do we disable system restore, educate the end user, schedule scans, do a signature update, or quarantine the system? How did you answer this one? We're a little torn. After having 60 and 70 and 80% answers, we now have what could possibly be close to a two-way tie for first and a two-way tie for second. 35% of you say quarantine the system. 24% of you say signature update. 17% said educate the end user. 15% say disable system restore. And 9%, still almost double digits, say schedule scans. So as people are mentioning in the chat room, this all revolves around that big long word, remediation. And that is how it is described in the CompTIA exam objectives. And it's a good word to describe what's going on. Although, as I mentioned many times in my videos, the best way to get rid of malware is you delete everything and you either install fresh or you restore from a known good backup. And when I say known good, I'm really meaning a backup that does not have the same malware on it. Sometimes it's not, you don't always know if it's a known good. We sort of think it's good. Backup probably would not be good enough. You really need a known good backup. This remediation phase means we are going to fix what is broken. We're going to remove the malware and remediate the system, bring it back to working order with this. Being able to remove or fix the problem is the remediation phase. So if you go through all this list of things about fixing a problem, which one of these actually fixes the problem or is part of the process of fixing the problem? We disable system restore very early on in the process. Right after we recognize that malware is on the system, we disable the system restore, which doesn't fix anything. It just prevents the system from being reinfected. That's not a remediation. Educating the end user, some people say we should do that first, but it is actually one of the last phases in the malware removal process. Educating the end user doesn't fix the computer. It might prevent the computer from being infected in the future, but it doesn't fix the machine that's sitting in front of us, not part of the remediation phase. Scheduling scans is something that should absolutely be done. Maybe your system should scan itself either, of course, on demand, but maybe at the end of the day, we go through and perform a complete scan of the system just to make sure we didn't miss anything. Scheduling a scan, scheduling when a scan will occur, is not a remediation process. It's more of a preventive process. So scheduling scans would not be part of the remediation phase. And then quarantining the system, as I mentioned, quarantining is something you happen at the very beginning to take that system off the network, to prevent anyone from communicating to that system and to prevent that system from communicating to anyone else. You're making sure the malware doesn't go anywhere. It could be a worm, and we don't want that worm to hop over the network to another computer. So we disconnect the network, we unplug everything, we make sure there's no storage drives connected. It has no way to communicate over wireless. It is completely quarantined, but that doesn't fix your system. That doesn't remediate anything. Which leaves us with the last option. Answer D was to perform a signature update. And a signature update is an important step of remediation. It happens just before we perform the actual malware removal, but we can't remove the malware unless we know what the malware looks like. And the thing that tells us what the malware looks like is the remediation phase where we download the latest set of signatures. So that is what we would do, is perform a signature update so that we can then check this, scan the system, and perhaps even remove the malware. Now, the signature itself is one that if it hasn't been updated lately, you may want to click into the settings and perform an update yourself and make sure that you're running the latest version of the signatures. Then finally, you can then perform the update. Now, if you have malware on your system, you may find that the update process doesn't work. The malware is smart enough to know that you're going to update your signatures. It doesn't want you to update the signatures because then it would be found out. So it disables, very often, the update process. In fact, many times it disables the antivirus that's on your system completely. So this may not be the easiest process, especially we just unplug this machine. It's already quarantined. If you click update here, it probably isn't getting out to the internet. You're going to need to copy the latest signature files from one computer, copy it onto a system, and then plug that USB drive or some other type of storage media onto this computer so that you can then update the signature files. That is the best thing to do during the remediation process. None of those other options provided you with anything relating to remediation. The only thing that remediates here is the signature update. That is indeed during that remediation phase. And then you can find that 25% of you chose that answer D. You got it absolutely correct. That is the correct answer. We're going to need to perform that signature update just prior to performing the removal process. That is what you would use. If you answer D, you got that one absolutely right. There is so much to know for the 220-1002. Even if you're already familiar with Windows and Linux and Mac OS, you'll find there's a lot of content you still need to know. And often people ask me, how do I know what I should really be studying for this exam? One of the best ways is to download the free set of exam objectives from CompTIA. Go out to professormesser.com/objectives. Use the link there to take you over to the CompTIA website so that you can download those exam objectives, or just go to your favorite search engine and search for CompTIA exam objectives. Download what those latest objectives are. They are a great checklist. They will tell you everything you need to know. And if you know everything that's in these exam objectives, you're going to do just fine on the exam. You're not going to have a problem at all with anything you will find on your A+ exam. professormesser.com/objectives. Another thing you've noticed today is we've stepped through a number of topics, but of course the exam itself has, well, up to 90 questions on a single exam. They can give you fewer than that, but that is the maximum. What I have found, though, is that a lot of the Q&A that I see on the internet is really not so great. It's not the best. I would like to have people study from something that has the same flavor as the CompTIA exam. It has the same topics, obviously, as the CompTIA exam. And it's one that can give you knowledge about the things you don't know about. A practice question should be something that can help you study. But a lot of the things on the internet don't give you any feedback as to whether you got it right, wrong, or why you got it right or wrong. Not a really useful thing. So I created my own set of practice exams to give you the highest quality questions that anyone could possibly find for the A+ exams for both the Core 1 and Core 2 exams. Let's do one. I know we're top of the hour, but it's Friday. So let's do a question that comes directly from the book. This is question 822. This is both a digital PDF, and as usual, I have the printed version of this as well. It's a big book. This is a large book with 380 pages in it of questions and answers. This question's question 822, which asks, a system administrator is upgrading an email service in the corporate data center. During the upgrade, an error message occurs and the upgrade fails. Subsequent attempts to perform the upgrade also fail. Which of the following processes should the system administrator follow to return the email server to its previous state? Should we perform a backup plan, a disaster recovery plan, an incident response plan, or a power plan? And you can, if you have the book, you can flip forward to page 33 to look at the quick answer, which will tell you A, B, C, or D. Or you can go to the details page, page 58, and have a look at more detail with that, which we will do in just a moment. If you're using a PDF reader that has some type of annotation, you might even come here and draw on the screen. If you think it's D, you can choose D. Maybe if you think it's C, you can choose C. You've got the options to modify these to choose what it might be on the screen. And the links to the quick answer and the details are hyperlinks. So if I click where it says the details, it jumps forward to page 58, and then I'm able to break down what the answer really is. These exam questions, by the way, all on my website. So if you're somebody who's trying to find these questions and hunt them down, there's a question in the chat room about that, about where you would go to hunt those down. That's where you would go. All right, back to this, the details. I'm going to click on the details, and it says the same question, a system administrator is doing all of this, and it didn't work, and now what do we do? Do we go to a backup plan, disaster recovery plan, incident response, or power plan? You'll notice here A is the answer. I tell you right here that it's the backup plan, and I give you an explanation of why A is the right answer. Now, this is one where I never answer A. In fact, if I go back, the answer I chose was C, incident response plan. And I'm wondering, well, why isn't it C? Well, with all of the questions from my book, I give you an explanation not only for the correct answer, but also for all of the incorrect answers. And I explain why it's not disaster recovery, why it's not incident response, why it's not the power plan. And you can read through each one of those. In fact, I recommend that if you get this book and you got the answer right, backup plan, got it, no problem, I knew the answer, I highly recommend that you also read through the incorrect answers, because on your exam, you may not get a question about a backup plan. You might get a question about an incident response plan, and having read through the answer might give you more information about the context for that particular answer. These are all in my book. Now, if that's not enough and you're thinking, I still need more detail, at the bottom of every single detailed explanation page is a QR code that will take you right to the change. This is the video where this question came from. Objective 4.2, change management. You also got a direct link. You can go to my website that will give you information on this particular question. And then since this is a PDF reader, I'm just going to click the back button in my PDF reader, and I'm back to A22, and I can go to the next question that's on my list. All of this is in my practice exams book. You can get both a physical and digital edition of the practice exams book. It's on my website. Go to professormesser.com/core2pe. And just like with my course notes, if you buy the Core 1 and Core 2 simultaneously, you get a bit of a discount on purchasing both of those. So that might be something that can help you as well. professormesser.com/core2pe. And thank you always for your feedback. It's really your feedback over the years that has made that such a good set of questions and answers, and I appreciate that. We do one of these study groups every month. The next month, we have A+ study groups on March the 8th and March the 10th. We have Network Plus on March the 16th and Security Plus on March 23rd. We're not even done with February yet, though. If you come back next week, I've got Network Plus, and then a week after that, Security Plus. So we still have 2 more live streams here this month. There's always something going on. If you're trying to figure out when the next live event is going to be, you can go to the professormesser.com/calendar, look at our events calendar, or if you go to Discord, I have an events channel in my Discord server that I also update. Now, this was one of these weeks where the dates got changed. I announced a date in January, and you notice the date I announced in January is different than when we're actually doing the live stream. That happens all the time. My world is a chaotic one sometimes, so it's very useful to know where you can go to find out when the next event is going to be. Go to professormesser.com/calendar. Well, I know we're in overtime. Thank you for sticking around for the main part of the show, but there's more coming. There's an after show. We're about to go start that one. Stick around for that, where I will take questions from the chat room. We'll talk about whatever you would like to talk about. Don't forget about my course notes and practice exams and even my Success Bundle. We didn't even talk about the physical version of the Success Bundle as a flash drive with everything on it. You can find that on my website as well. There's a digital version of that out there at professormesser.com/1002success. Also have those vouchers. Don't pay full price for your vouchers. If you're on the Pearson VUE website, you're paying 100% of that cost. Why not save some money on the vouchers? Go to professormesser.com/vouchers. You can save a little money and get my Exam Hacks ebook for free. And don't forget about our daily pop quiz questions at professormesser.com/Twitter, professormesser.com/Instagram. And if you like this study group, I'd love it if you clicked the like button on your YouTube video that's in front of you. You can also leave a comment on the website. I like responding to those, and a comment on the YouTube channel as well. Those are always fun to go through. Stick around for the after show. We got a lot more to do, and it's Friday. Thanks for being here in this first hour. We'll see you next time on the A+ Study Group. All right, let me adjust some things on my side. Let's get rid of that. There we go. Be able to get through these. Let's see what we can do for this. All right. I have a lot to pour through on this side. Let me make some adjustments to the lower third so that you will know where to go for the Q&A. What we'll do is I'll just take Q&A directly from the chat. Now, if you're watching this on YouTube, it's the YouTube chat. If you are on ProfessorMesser.com/live, which is my site, you're watching this live, there's a chat just underneath the video. It's the same chat. It's the one I'm looking at, or the one I've been looking at this whole time. For those of you wondering, this is what I see. I've got the chat right here, kind of going by, watching what people happen to be saying. And I'll take any question. If you have a question about A+, you have a question about technology, you have a question about something in the news, or you just have a question in general about some of the things you're going through during the study process, we are here to answer those. G in the chat room, the course notes are such a big help. Thank you. I appreciate that. First, thank you for your support of those course notes. It really does go a long way, and I appreciate that. And I've hopefully given some notes now that people are able to use. I get great feedback on those, that people they're studying until the very last second they walk in just by taking this around with them. And the digital version is really nice to have, because you can take it everywhere on all of your mobile devices. Do I have performance-based questions in my practice questions book? I absolutely do. Can't really see them very well in here. It's 5 performance-based questions for each of the 3 practice exams. So there's a total of 15 performance-based questions in the book. So that'll give you an idea of performance-based questions. Of course, we always do a new performance-based question on every study group as well. So you might even want to go back to previous study group versions to find those performance-based questions. Barb asked the question about ageism. This does come up from time to time, especially for people that are just getting into IT. Will that be an issue looking for entry-level IT? Well, from the feedback I'm getting, it doesn't usually, especially when somebody has been in the industry for a while or has been working for a while, even if they haven't been in the IT industry. If you are working in any industry, you start to build relationships with other people. And one of the things I highly recommend, if you are moving from one market segment or vertical market into information technology, I always recommend that you take advantage of these people that you've met along the way. The very first job I got in IT after graduating from college, I didn't know anyone there. But every job I got after that, I knew somebody who worked there. It was many times a professional acquaintance, somebody I knew of them. I saw them, I met them at a trade show, met them in doing other types of business. We weren't spending time together. I wasn't hanging out at their house. Our families weren't together, but we knew each other. Oh yeah, I know that person. I saw him at the trade show, that sort of thing. Having that category, that library of people, and I highly recommend, if you don't have a LinkedIn, make sure you build one as fast as you can with all of the people you know that you've worked with. And it's great because you can reach out to them and say, I'm really looking for a job in IT now. Do you happen to know if there's any opportunities in your organization? They already know you. To them, there is no issue of ageism. There's no problem with being a certain age. They know your work ethic, they know you as a person, and they are more apt to hire you for that particular position. Now, that doesn't mean that ageism doesn't exist. I have also received messages from people that have had to deal with that. Now, there are, fortunately, a number of legal remedies to when you feel that this may be an age-related discrimination, but it does become a little more difficult over the age of 40, convincing somebody that you are perfect for this entry-level IT job. And that's why I recommend that if you're someone who is working along those ways and you're trying to figure out what you can do to make that make this process a little bit easier, I would recommend contacting and working with people you already know. I think that's one of the best things you can do. Are there ways to build that library of people? There absolutely is. There's got to be trade shows in your area. There's probably user groups. A lot of the user groups are remote, although now we're actually at a point where we might be doing more in-person user groups these days. There are people you can meet online. There's people all over that you can begin creating this network, a people network, that you can use to help find the jobs you might want. So that would be a real key to do it. Another question in the chat room: what's the best way to get into the industry if you're just starting out? This is a long answer, literally a 30-minute answer. And one of the things that I've done, if you look at the YouTube video description of this video, one of the links in that description is a video from my channel called How to Get a Job in IT with No Experience. And that particular video, when I say it's 30 minutes long, it is chock full of information for that entire 30-minute period. I realize it's a long video, much longer than I was expecting to make. But I realized as I got into it, there's a lot of information here that can help you. I focus on 4 elements in that video. One is formal education. The second is industry certifications. The third is some type of experience of some kind. And the fourth, we already mentioned this, someone you know. So if you wanted to maximize your opportunity, you really wanted to maximize your ability to get that job, you need all 4 of those particular elements. In the video, I step through all of them. I tell you how you can get them. I tell you the advantages and disadvantages. Not everybody has all 4 of those elements. So I also talk about things you can do to make one of those elements a little bit stronger than the others. You might have a lot of great experience and no formal education. There's still jobs out there for you. I worked with someone in my last job working for another company who did not have a college degree and yet was incredibly successful financially, was making a lot more money than I was doing a job that normally you would expect with someone who was a college graduate. He wasn't, and he was crushing it. So it's not a requirement in IT. It might help you if you someday wanted to get into management, but you don't want to do that anyway. Don't do that. Don't get into management. What are you doing? What are you thinking? No, it's a bad idea. Maybe you do. Maybe ultimately you do. I have a degree in management. I think that's why I don't want to go in management. I think I've pieced it together. I've solved the puzzle of why I don't want to go into management, because that's what I got trained on. I like the techie side. It was the short answer to that, much more than the management side. The management side was fun. I was a systems engineering manager for a while, until they decided, you're not really good at this. Maybe you should do something else. And I thought, you know what? You might have really figured that one out. I think you've solved the whole thing. You're right. Not really good at that. Maybe I will go back and do something more technical. I think it worked out. You never know at the time if you're really making the right decision. You sort of have to trust yourself that you're getting there. So I would recommend, if you are someone wanting to get into IT, have a look at that video. That might help you too. How to get a job in IT with no experience, which is pretty much where everybody getting in IT, they don't have experience yet. So how do you do that? We keep working through all of those challenges. Also in the chat room, Andrew asks, do I have good resources for practicing command line tools? I feel like I need hands-on for things to sink in. Well, first, there are my videos. And one of the things I do in my videos is I demonstrate all of these command lines. So the screen goes black, we go to the terminal screen, I show you how it works. But I try to use a description and explanation and commands that you could use on your own system. So when I run a netstat, when I run a trace route, when I run a copy command, when I do all of these things on my computer, you could do them as well. And if you're worried about that, you could always load up and run a virtual machine to make that happen. This is something that I agree with you, Andrew, getting the hands-on is sometimes the most critical part. There's something about that muscle memory. When you type in trace route to quad 9, trace route 9.9.9.9, you hit enter and you see these things come up on the screen. You start examining, what am I looking at here? What do each one of these things mean? So you're not only just running the command, you're evaluating the output of the command. And I think all of that gives you a better understanding of when you would use that technology. So getting the hands-on can sometimes be a real difference in your studying because you did it, you know it. And now if a scenario comes up, you know what that command did and how it might fit into that scenario. I think that would work. Also in the chat room, another question. I'm a new subscriber, was wondering if I pass the Network Plus, the N10008, if you're wondering if I will pass the Network Plus if I didn't complete the A+, or if I don't have experience in IT. And this is a pretty common question because CompTIA provides an A+ certification, a Network Plus certification, a Security Plus certification. There's lots of different certs. And people ask me all the time, can I just start with Security Plus? You know, I want to work for an employer. The employer wants me to get my Security Plus. In fact, they don't care if I have an A+ or Network Plus. They just want the Security Plus. But do I first have to do A+ and Network Plus before I can take Security Plus? Or perhaps even more importantly, will taking the A+ or Network Plus help me pass the Security Plus? So those are really two different questions. First, there are no formal prerequisites for any CompTIA exam. So you can take the A+ with no experience or anything else. You could start with the Network Plus and take it with no certifications or previous experience. Or you could take Security Plus without taking A+, Network Plus, or having any previous experience. Those are really good options if it fits your particular scenario. So I just gave you one where in some cases, A+ is the most important cert you should get. But in other situations, Security Plus is the more important certification. It depends on what you're looking for, what employers are looking for. And sometimes it's also impacted on where you happen to live, your geography, or where that particular job happens to be. Security Plus, especially for federal government in the United States, is very popular. But if you are in Texas and you're not trying to work for a Department of Defense related company, then Security Plus may not be that important. A+ might be more. The way you would tell is to simply look at the job postings that are out there. If you're looking for a job posting with a company that's in Dallas and you notice that A+ is listed on that, and you look at another company in Dallas and A+ is listed on that one, and you look at another job posting that's in Dallas and A+ is also posted on that one, then A+ is probably what you would want to do. But if you live in Virginia, you live in Maryland, you live in the DC area, and you look at job postings, you'll notice that a lot of the job postings all say Security Plus. So you get to make that decision on which one's the most important. Now, the second question that I posed was, should I go ahead and take A+, Network Plus? Will that help me pass the Security Plus? And generally speaking, no. I mean, there are things that are in the A+ and things that are in the Network Plus that do blend into the Security Plus, but the actual overlap between those exams is very, very small. There's not a lot of overlap. It's probably 10% or less. That's not a lot. And the 10% that is overlapped is already part of the Security Plus anyway. The Security Plus exam tells you everything you need to know. And there's no expectation that you already knew it. So, in fact, we talked today about Radius. Radius also shows up on the Network Plus exam. Radius also shows up on the Security Plus exam. Obviously, the context is slightly different between them, but the information you're learning in all three of those is almost the same. I'm almost copying and pasting between those courses because the context of what you need to know with Radius really revolves around what Radius is does it do authentication? How does it do authentication? And then with networking, there's a little more networking piece into it. And with security, there's a little more of a security slant to it, but you're already learning it anyway as part of that criteria, as part of the entire set of exam objectives. So don't worry if you're taking the Security Plus that, I should have taken A Plus or Network Plus. Not going to help you very much because everything you need to know is already in the Security Plus exam anyway. So don't think that you have to work your way up to Security Plus. Many people come to my site that start with the Security Plus exam, most often because they're trying to get a job with a company that is related to Department of Defense in the United States. So that might help you figure those things out too. Don't make this harder than it needs to be. It's take one at a time. Take the one that makes sense for you. Don't worry about what might be contained in those other exams. If you happen to take one exam and then you take the second one, you notice there's a little bit of overlap. It's just a bonus. Think of it that way. Radius is everywhere too. I've implemented a lot of Radius authentication. Having implemented operating systems and firewalls, there's just tons of authentication that's used for those. So I've spent my time with Radius for sure. Radius and lots of LDAP and lots of Kerberos for all of those, and a little bit of TACACS, a little bit. It's because the company I was working for was not Cisco. So I know that TACACS, and people will tell me this, I look forward to your cards and letters, will tell me, TACACS is not just for Cisco. You're absolutely right. You are correct. But it tends to be very focused in the Cisco ecosystem, in the Cisco world. You don't tend to see a lot of TACACS outside of Cisco. And generally, you see a lot more LDAP. You see a lot more Kerberos. There's a little more, in fact, they're a little bit better from an authentication perspective. They provide you with a few more options over TACACS when you're working through things like LDAP, Radius. You got other options there. So they just tend to be a little bit more common when you start working through those. Question from Jeff, which asks, I applied for an IT help desk position at a large company. They offered me to interview for a different non-IT position. Should I try to get that job to, quote, get my foot in the door? I'm very confused by this question. I'm not confused by the question. I'm confused by the company that has you wanting to interview for an IT position, and they say, nah, you don't want to interview for IT. We've got this other thing over here. Yeah, but I want a job in IT. So getting a job doing something else will not help you very much. There's not a lot of I guess you are technically getting your foot into the door of that company, but you're really hoping later on that you can somehow within that company pivot into the IT department. And sort of my argument that is never going to happen to you is probably twofold. First, you applied for an IT position and the company didn't let you interview for that one. They wanted you to interview for something else. Already I'm concerned over this company. I walked in the door wanting to interview for IT, and you want me to work for accounting department, or you want me to do this other thing. No, I want an IT position. Already I'm concerned the company may not have your interest in mind. And that's sometimes, unfortunately, the case. The second thing is once you start working in accounting, in marketing, in shipping and receiving, you're doing something other than IT, you can't transition out of that job to another company into an IT role because you don't work in IT. You have no experience in IT, and you will continue to have no experience in IT. I would say someone that is redirecting you. If I walked into an interview and they said, well, I know you're here for the IT position, but we really have this job we're trying to fill that's in marketing, or something else that's in QA. Maybe it's something that's kind of tertiary. It's very similar to IT, but it isn't really. It's a programming job. Not that programming jobs are bad, but it's not IT. That is unusual for someone to do that. And if I was to walk in somewhere and ready to talk about IT, and they said, well, actually, we're not hiring for that job. Okay, well, that's cool. Well, at least you know now how this company works, and you can say, well, appreciate that, but that's not what I want. I want to go work in IT. So that's it. So Jeff says a little more. Thank you for adding some context, Jeff, because that was confusing. Your resume is in hospitality management. Okay, well, that makes a little sense. And they say they just sent your resume down to food and beverage. That makes sense. And they want you to manage. They want you to interview for that position. But you don't want to do that anymore. I think there's a couple things we need to do. First thing you need to do is fix your resume. Your resume, you need to remove, and I know you've had these positions in hospitality management. You've done these things relating to hospitality management, but that's not where you want to work. Your resume needs to position you to work in IT if that's what you would like to do. So your resume needs to be reconstructed to have more of a technical flair associated with it. Now, is there a way to get around that when you are talking about your previous jobs? Not really. You kind of have to go with your previous jobs, but only do a couple of previous positions or maybe even one of those. If you have a history in hospitality management, you don't need to tell anybody else that you've had 10 jobs in hospitality management because you want a job in IT. And quite honestly, everybody who's trying to start in IT in an entry-level position also has no experience in IT. You are just as qualified to work in a help desk as an entry-level person or remote desktop support or remote or someone, a field service technician. All of these entry-level positions you can get in IT, you are just as qualified to get that job as everybody else who has worked somewhere else. I started work, one of my first jobs was working in a blueberry field with a hoe, getting rid of weeds. I upgraded from that job into a position where I worked in a video rental store. We used to have physical videos and you would rent them. It's a long story and I can tell you more if you'd like to know about it. None of those jobs were IT jobs. One was literally an agriculture job. You hop in the back of a truck in the morning, they drive you out to the field, you work in the sun, you get back in the truck and they drive you home. The next job was movie gallery. It was not Blockbuster, so it wasn't part of the clan there, but movie gallery was pretty good anyway. That was a retail job, not really one that was IT. So I had work experience, but I wasn't going to put on my resume that I worked, at a dairy hoeing blueberry fields. That doesn't work when you're trying to get a job in IT. I kind of showed the last job I had to be able to do that. I'm showing my age. This is a video-based medium. So that particular horse has indeed left the barn, Chris. So I think we're very clear on that one. But at least it may be an opportunity. Back to the question, Jeff, this may be an opportunity to hone your resume. We need to change your resume around so that it's very technical. And I realize you have this history in hospitality management. Maybe this, and I mentioned this in my video of how to get a job in IT with no experience. Maybe this is where we really want to spend some time on our home lab. We need to build out a Windows server with Active Directory. We need to build out a Windows machine connected to Active Directory. We need to get some hands-on experience with group policy, with resetting passwords, with updating and managing and disabling accounts. Those are the things that the employer's really looking for. Those are skills they would like you to see. And they're skills that you can set up and run in your own home on one single system with virtual machines. You can simply set up Windows Server. There's a 90-day evaluation on the Microsoft website. You can load up Windows 10 or Windows 11. There's free VM downloads on modern.ie that are directly from Microsoft. And you can connect those together and start working with them. Then you can put it on a resume. I know about working with Active Directory. I've done password resets. I've configured account settings. I've set quotas for hard drives. I've configured and made sure that folder redirection is working properly. I've reset users' home drives. I've configured login scripts. All these things you can do just by setting up and running 2 different VMs. That's a great lab if you're trying to get more experience in Windows. And it's like an afternoon or maybe a day's worth of time, because if you've never installed Windows before, you just sort of stumble around these. Yeah, I think you're right. I think they did increase the evaluation time to 180 days. So it's even more than 90 days. It's like half a year to run this. And you can run Windows. I think I just loaded up Windows Server 2022, 180 days. I did that for some things that are coming in a new video. But those are freely available tools. They're on the Microsoft website. And now you can fix your resume to have, if you look at my video, I have another set of videos. I'm sorry for the video recommendations, but this is why I made these videos on my channel. So I have 2 other videos. These are shorter 10-minute videos that are 5 reasons your resume keeps getting rejected. And the follow-up to that was 5 more reasons your resume keeps getting rejected. And in that second video, I think it is, maybe in the first, I'm trying to remember, but in one of those, I talk about customizing your resume. And I take a single resume that's not customized, that's not optimized for IT, and I move things around and change things at the top so that the first thing that someone sees on this resume is your name, your address, and all of these technical things you know. Before they even get, as they say, below the fold, they're just at the top half of the resume, which, by the way, it's really hard to have somebody read past the top half, as sad as that is. The HR person reads a lot more than that, but when you sit down in an interview situation where they have your resume, it's very hard to get the person on the other side of the table to look farther than the top half of the resume and the last job you had. That's what they really focus on. You may have a second page, which I don't recommend, but you could even have more information below the fold. You could turn it around and have information on the back. They won't see it. They very rarely will see it. I don't want to be too negative, but it's what I've found after, I don't know, 1 million interviews. That just tends to be what I happen to see. That's what I would recommend, is focus on optimizing your resume to decrease the emphasis on one type of position and really emphasize your skills with IT. Is it going to take a little more work? Yeah, it is. Is it going to require maybe some lab time at home? It will. But you need to somehow get those skills together, become familiar with them. There are tons of great videos on the YouTube that can help you build out some of these labs. So make sure you take advantage of those. Hopefully that will work. And Jeff, you're right. Jeff's taking your Core 2 next week. Yeah, putting that on the resume is going to be strong. If you look at my sample resume I do in that video, there's like a big block at the top with all of these different technologies that I know that I put into the list. So put those in there. Windows 10, Windows 11, Windows Server, Active Directory, folder redirection. You just name off all those things I just named off once you've done them. Are they a little, it depends on your knowledge base and what you know and what you've accumulated as skills over time, but you may be able to fill that out and have it look pretty good when you walk into the exam. A couple of super chats come through while I've been talking so much. Q5 reacts with the 4.49 pound super chat. 449. Hi, Prof. Passed my A+ 1001 by going through my exams. Excellent. Thank you. I appreciate that. Lost motivation to complete the 1002. Maybe we helped you with that today. I'm already a 4-year IT support tech, need help. Well, this is a chance. Maybe this is a good chance to step back a little bit and have a look at what you're trying to do. If you've been in an IT support tech role for 4 years, you probably know a lot of the things we went through today just cold. You just know it. I mean, you've been doing it for 4 years, and you're probably right. It's probably time now to do something else. So now you often get in these interview situations where people will say, where do you see yourself in 10 years? Brother, this is IT. I don't know where I'm going to see myself in a year. Things move fast in IT. So especially now, things are really starting to ramp up. I'm starting to see a little bit more motion happening. We've gone through 2 years of just nothing. It's been stagnant. So now maybe you want to do something else. I always tell people, don't worry about the 5-year plan. Don't worry about the 10-year plan. Those things will tend to work themselves out for you anyway. Think about, what do you want to do next? That's a pretty simple question. Well, it's not simple, but it's as simple as you can get when it comes to career goals. What do you like to do? And if you have 4 years as an IT support tech, there's probably some things you've worked with that you really like. You know, maybe every time you work on Linux, you're like, this is great. I love Linux. Maybe every time you work on some of the Windows servers, you're like, I really know this Active Directory stuff cold. I really like working with Microsoft. Or maybe you've had a chance to work on some of the networking pieces. Maybe you've worked with the network team on switches and routers, and you think that network management thing could be strong. I would really like to do that. There is where you should go. Because in IT, it's very difficult to make a wrong decision about where you want to move from a technology perspective. There's tons of technologies out here. Do you want to do cloud? You want to do email? You want to do databases? You want to do data centers? You want to do servers? You want to do workstations? What do you want to do? Just pick it. You pick it and learn every possible thing you can learn about that technology. But that's also a direction that should tell you where you should get your next job. So if you're looking through this and you think, yeah, I really do like switches, routers, configuring and troubleshooting spanning tree, trying to work through routing problems, trying to understand dynamic routing protocols, configuring WAN links, setting up static routes, understanding how to take the dynamic routes and do route redistributions from one type to another. You know, all of those things are fun to do. So maybe there's your clue, and you could say, let's go look for entry-level networking jobs. You've already got 4 years of IT support tech, and you may find that when you start looking for those jobs, that none of them are asking for an A+. Or you may be transitioning into desktop management, server management, something relating to Windows, and you may find that all of those jobs are asking for an A+. So it's not that, I don't think you've lost motivation. I think you just need to set up a plan of where you want to go and then put the building blocks in the middle of that will get you to that goal. You know, some of those blocks are learning new skills. Some of them are getting certifications. Some of them are moving to a different city. You know, you can go big with these types of things. So that's what I would recommend too, is figure out what is the next step. Not the 5-year step, not the 10-year step. Where do you want to go from here? There's got to be something that interests you. And then change your focus to be, all right, let's do that one. We're going to commit. We're going to commit hard. We're going to run into as fast as we can towards that. Now, will we run into the wall? Maybe. And if we run into the wall, we're going to run into the wall really, really hard. Never run into the wall softly. You want to just go as fast as you can towards whatever that goal is. And if you get tripped up and you fall or you hit a wall, then you get tripped up and you fall and you hit a wall and you get up again. As it turns out, and people don't really say this a lot, you know, when you're pushing that hard and people always talk about hitting the wall and you've now gone fast as you can and boy, doesn't that wall hurt. Well, it turns out the people that have hit the wall and they've now stood up and they go, well, that actually didn't hurt as bad as they said it was. You always learn something once you hit the wall anyway. We all hit the wall. We all go really fast towards certain goals and something happens and a wrench gets thrown into the entire thing and it does not go the way you would expect. We've all had to deal with that. But as it turns out, you pick yourself up, you redirect, you figure out what you did wrong, and you just go again. So just keep doing that. That's what I would recommend. Don't worry about losing any type of motivation. Instead, find the motivation, and then your certification should be based on what that motivation happens to be. Never take, I know this sounds weird for me to say as someone who builds training courses to get you certified, but never take a certification just for the certification's sake. That's not the purpose. I mean, sometimes it is if you just want a knowledge of that technology. You're not looking for a job. You're just interested in that technology. That's different. But I would say the vast majority of you that are here, you're either looking for a job or you're looking for a better job. So don't think about, if I get a certification, I can get this kind of job. You should be thinking, I want that kind of job. What do I need to get there? And maybe that also includes a certification along the line. That's what I would recommend too. So I know it's sort of a long answer. Other people in the chat room are also chiming in. So a number of great tips and hints in there too. Have a look through what other people are saying as well. And thank you also for the super chat. I appreciate that. Also in the super chat, Arturo in the chat room with a $10 super chat. How do I make a resume if I've never worked at an IT job? I'm currently a welder. Any advice? Do you have to have Network Plus? Also, do I have Network Plus practice exams? Which is like the number 3 question I get all the time. And let's answer the last question first. Not yet. I do hope this year sometime to have practice exams for Network Plus. Those will be Network Plus 008 practice exams if and when they ever appear. So I'm not making guarantees. I would like to have them done this year, though. And they will be for the N10008. There are no current plans to create N10007 practice exams. Sorry about that. So let's talk. I sort of answered Arturo's question with the last question, really, which is, how do you make a resume if you've never had an IT job? And I talk about that in my video of why your resume keeps getting rejected. And I talk about, and many people don't realize this, I talk about building these resumes out and creating a customized resume every time you submit your resume for a new position. So for every job, let's say there's 10 job postings out there, don't send the same resume to all 10 job postings. You should be sending 10 different resumes. You may be thinking to yourself, wait, is this like a gift card where you're effectively giving me a task every time I want to do something? Oh, thank you for the gift card. Now I have to go do this myself. Well, it's the same thing, yes. I'm telling you that if you are submitting a resume to someone, update that resume and have it match what the employer is looking for. And then on the second one you're submitting to someone else, it should be a different resume. I'm not talking about a completely different resume. I'm not talking about a 99% difference. I'm talking about 10% of the resume is different. But there is a way to optimize the resume that can get you through the systems that HR uses to automatically evaluate these resumes. I think a lot of people don't realize this, is that not everyone who is submitting these resumes and receiving them is reading them. They're having a computer read it for them, giving them a score based on the words on your resume and presenting a set of scores. Now, good HR people will still scan through every single resume that comes in. Many employers do, but they do use that scoring system. So how do you optimize your resume to get the highest possible score? You customize it when you send it in. You effectively take the words in their job posting out of the posting and you put them in your resume. What could be a more perfect match than to take what they have said and simply repeat it back at them? Assuming you have those skills. Please do not put things on your resume that are not true. But if you have the things they're looking for, then you should give them a sheet of paper that tells them you have exactly what they're looking for. What could be more obvious? And I give you examples in those videos of how to do that and how to do it very quickly. The other things that I mentioned in my videos, and they've been mentioned in the chat room, are cover letters. And I didn't ever used to see the point of cover letters. I am perhaps the ultimate concrete sequential when it comes to this. You're already putting a job posting out there. I'm sending you a resume. Do I need to create another piece of paper that tells you I'm sending you a resume for the job posting that you put out there? Don't you know that the resume I'm sending to you is because you put the job posting? Of course you do. We don't need to make this more complicated than it already is. So why am I doing a cover letter? And that's what I thought. Boy, was I wrong. Employers love, especially HR, loves these cover letters. They read the cover letter. But how do you create a cover letter that really matches and positions you as being right for this job? And one of the best ways to do it, at least the way that I think about it in my mind, is a T cover letter. T, like the letter T. A T cover letter is a very easy way to practically do what I just said. You take what they asked for in their job posting and you explain, you put that on one side of the T, and on the other side of the T, you explain how your personal skills match what they're looking for. I saw in your job posting, you were looking for somebody with this skill, this skill, this skill, and this skill. I have those. Here they are. I can do this. Here's how I match that one. Here's the skills I have relating to this. And here's the fourth one. And that's your cover letter. That's how easy it is. I show you how to do this in minutes in my video, the second video, how to, it's called More Reasons Why Your Resume Keeps Getting Rejected. It's the second in that series. That's one that does take you through each one of those and gives you an idea of how you could quickly create a cover letter that not only, obviously, the more cover letter you have, perhaps the more opportunity to get more points with the HR system, but it also, without them ever seeing your resume, they can see that you match what they're looking for. Because ultimately, this is what the HR person is going to do. They're going to scan the top. They're going to see where you live, at least the city. People are commonly not putting their exact address on resumes any longer, but they're putting their city and state. We can have an argument about that one. There is, they look at your skills because it needs to match what they're looking for. And they might look at your last employer or last couple, 2 or 3 jobs to see if there's any gaps and if you are currently employed anywhere. And I also talk in my videos on why your resume keeps getting rejected on how you can make that process easier for HR, which may also get you some points in their minds as you're showing them how to make this happen. That is a great way to do it. So both the cover letter and the resume itself are incredibly important. So make sure that you are familiar with some of the things you can put in there. Arturo, we just mentioned, for example, that, all right, all the jobs you've had to this point have been as a welder. You know, that's from an IT perspective, that's just as useful for someone who used to hoe blueberries out in the field or used to work in a video rental store. There's just no IT connection there at all. So you don't want to emphasize your experience other than the fact that I've had these jobs, I've worked there for years or for a certain amount of time, so somebody can see that you're reliable and you're not jumping from job to job. That's a good reason to put those jobs on your resume. But the answer you give to somebody when they're looking at your resume and saying, you know, I notice on here you don't have any IT experience. And it's an obvious answer. I'm not sure why they're asking because, well, this is the job I'm applying for. From your job posting said you're looking for an entry-level IT person. I took all those welding jobs and everything so that I could earn enough money to learn more IT skills and get into the IT field. So I've been working this entire time so that I can now sit across the table from you and say, what do I need to know to get that job? Or here are the skills that I have compiled over time and the things I can do in IT that show you that I have knowledge working with these technologies. And maybe I built a lab at home. Maybe I've done some volunteer work where I've done IT. Maybe I know somebody who works in your organization in the IT department who knows me. All these things count. So you need to make sure that you have that list available as well so that you can show them how much you know about IT and how interested you are in working with IT. Yeah, I did these other jobs. Those other jobs were just so I can get here and talk more about IT. That's the answer when somebody talks about those things. I know I have a lot of jobs in doing this other thing that has nothing to do with technology. I did those jobs so that I could get to this point, and now I'm ready to start my career in IT. That's what you do. DC in the chat room, $2 super chat. Thank you so much for the $2 super chat. Thank you, Prof. Passed my A+. Congratulations. Studying Security Plus right now, which in itself is a challenging, huge exam. Congratulations on your A+. Best of luck with that Security Plus. We have plenty of study resources available out on the internet for you. And that's going to be a fun one to take and a fun one to have on your resume too. That's a big exam. So hopefully those are the things help you. And thank you also for the super chat. We appreciate it. Let's keep going in this list. Need some coffee. Let's see what other things might be here. Let's talk to let's go to Andrew in the chat room, who says, I work for Compliance as a Service Company, CAAS, because everything's as a service these days. I'm looking to change roles to service desk after I get certified. Excellent. I was wondering how to professionally approach a request to interview and change. Well, if you're within your same company, then you really need to go to the IT department or have people you know in the IT department who can be on your side. You need to start garnering some support from the people that work over in IT. And if you can get into the help desk and get into that entry-level position, you're going to need somebody who is really going to work with you to be able to do that. It's sometimes a challenge within a single company because the department you work in now probably doesn't want to lose you and have to replace that. Sometimes there can be a little bit of a political fight, and they might work behind the scenes to prevent you from moving into the IT department at your own company. This happens all the time. Is it fair? It is not. Is it legal? It is. They can absolutely do this. But it's a little bit petty. It's a little bit short-sighted because what happens when you do that to an employee? Well, they leave. They go somewhere else. And then, in fact, that may have to be your strategy may have to include that as an option. You may have to decide, I'm going to have to leave this company and go to a different organization if I want to make the jump into IT. That's just one of those things. Hopefully that can give you some ideas of what you can work on. It's never one thing. It's always multiple things to be able to make that happen. So maybe that can give you some ideas of how you can get around some of the difficulties and in some cases roadblocks that would prevent you from getting into the IT group. Also in the chat room, CID says, I've pretty much made up my mind to take the CCNA next. I've read that CCNA carries more weight than Network Plus. What is your opinion? Well, why would you take the CCNA? Why wouldn't you go take the CCIE? That has more weight than the CCNA. Why wouldn't you go take the CISSP, which has a lot more weight in security than CCNA does? Well, you don't take those certifications because you don't have the skills yet to take those certifications. It's a building block. CCNA is not an entry-level certification. It has in no way replaces Network Plus. Those are not comparative. Network Plus is an entry-level certification designed to give you the basics of networking, and they're really designed for somebody who's going to work for a network-based company, maybe a help desk or a network operations center, a NOC. That's the type of job that Network Plus is designed to focus on. And in some cases, Network Plus is a good precursor to something that's more advanced like the CCNA. I would say CCNA is more of an intermediate certification. It's certainly more difficult. It is certainly more involved, and it's certainly much broader than Network Plus happens to be. There's a lot more you have to know to pass your CCNA. And I see people on the internet all the time telling other people, perhaps incorrectly, oh, just skip Network Plus. Just go get the CCNA. That's what you need to do. It's sort of like saying, I know that you know nothing about rebuilding a carburetor, but just jump in and go do it. Well, don't I need to know something more about how the carburetor works before I start taking it completely apart and trying to put it back together again? I mean, I could do it. It's going to take me a lot longer because I have no idea what I'm looking at. And perhaps at the end of the day, I'm not even sure what I did. I just did what you told me to do and I put it back together, but I'm really not sure of all the things that go around it. So I would not say that those are interchangeable because they are not. The only people I've ever, I swear this is 99% of the time, this could be 100% of the time, that the people saying you should skip Network Plus and go straight to CCNA are people that work their way through their career, took the CCNA eventually because they earned that knowledge through the years, and they started with CCNA and kept their way going, and they did not earn their Network Plus, so they have no context as to the information Network Plus provides. So almost always the people telling you not to get a particular cert are people that don't have that certification to begin with. I'm not sure that's really the best people to ask. Maybe you could ask them, oh, really? Why? What are the differences? I don't know. Yeah, Network Plus, it asks you about, and then they name some archaic technology from 20 years ago, which is not on the Network Plus. They think it does. They think Network Plus has never been updated in 20 years. It's unusual, but they're not right. Now, let's say, though, that you have been working at a help desk. You've been working with the network team. I talk about what you want to do next. And the next thing that you want to do is you really like this networking thing. You got Wireshark. You played around with Wireshark at home. You're able to read through the protocols. You've been talking to the network team at work. Maybe they even let you work on different projects over the weekend. You could stand behind them or work with them on installing new switches or configuring different routers. And you've been able to look at them and you think, that's really exciting. That's what I want to do. Now, you've already earned or you've already worked in the industry for a bit. You probably even have knowledge about the network. There's a very good argument to make for skipping over Network Plus and recognizing that I'm going to have to spend a little more time studying because there's a foundation of knowledge I don't have yet, but I'm just going to jump into CCNA because ultimately I know I want to manage switches and I know I want to manage routers and I want to know more about the network. That is a completely reasonable reason for jumping over Network Plus and going to CCNA. But again, you're not exchanging one for the other. They are not interchangeable. So that's why I tell people, find the path for you that makes sense on what you were going to do. That's what I would recommend, is going down that particular road. And everybody's got a different path. So I would think that's where you should focus too, is on that path. And if you work towards getting all of those decisions made about what you want to do next, I think a lot of these things fall into place. You don't have to worry about knowing what people are doing and where they're coming from and how that's going to be different. And in fact, this is a great opportunity for you. Go read through the Network Plus exam objectives. Go flip through a Network Plus book that you could pick up at the library, or maybe somebody else happens to have that you can look through. Or if you may want to check your local library, because a lot of libraries have access to O'Reilly and other guides for free. Some of these certification things that are available out there may be something you can download online from your existing public library. There is another idea along those lines is, once you've looked through Network Plus, go look through CCNA. Go see if you can see what the differences are between those. There are some dramatic differences. And of course, there's tons of videos out on the YouTube that can help you understand more about those differences. That's another thing to do. Get your own personal knowledge of, here's the skills you need for Network Plus, here's the skills you need for CCNA. maybe that will help you make a decision too. It's not as simple as exchanging one for the other. Sometimes it's absolutely not good to exchange one for the other. Sometimes it makes a little more sense. You just have to figure out what you want to do in your personal situation. And anyone telling you without any context and understanding anything about your personal situation, giving you a recommendation either way is ill-informed. You really need to do a lot more research than that to determine what direction you should be going. And your direction is yours, not someone else's. Everyone's path is a little bit different. I think one of the things I work on, and some of you are mentioning this, are things like getting an understanding of what the next step is, what you want to do next in the industry. That can be a challenge. So I would always recommend, if you're ever trying to work through, where do I go from here? What are the next steps? What am I trying to focus on? The way you really need to focus on all of these is to determine what that next step happens to be. And sometimes that does involve certifications and other pieces. We'll have to see if it works that way for you. Ben says, nervous about the CompTIA test coming up in 5 weeks. We got plenty of time. If anybody's in a position where they're sort of at the end of their studies, I highly recommend that you go back to the exam objectives. I'm going to pull up my objectives. I've only said this, I don't know, 1,000,000 times today. And I know you must be just tired of me talking about exam objectives over and over and over again. And let me explain to you why I say this over and over and over again. So here's the objectives for Core 2. These Core 2 exam objectives are, let me see if I can put this in a scroll mode, because we're going to go through detail. I'm going to scroll, tells me about the exam. Here's things, blah, blah, blah. Exam materials used, please note, etc. Now, they tell you on here, and people do bring this up to me often, the lists of examples provided in bulleted format are not exhaustive lists. Other examples of technologies, processes, or tasks pertaining to each objective may also be included on the exam, though not listed or covered in this objectives document. Now, that's true. CompTIA tells you, we're telling you these are the objectives, but it turns out we could ask you anything we want and put it on the exam, and it's fair game. Yeah, that's true. They could. But as it turns out, they don't. They rarely go outside the scope of these objectives. That's what makes these so valuable. You don't get these with Cisco. You don't get these with Microsoft. You don't get these with VMware. I think CompTIA is one of the few organizations that gives you a detailed, line-by-line, bullet-by-bullet representation of what you need to know when you walk into the exam. For example, the very beginning in Domain 1.0 operating system, Section 1.1 is to compare and contrast common operating system types and their purposes. And this goes through bullets such as 32-bit versus 64-bit, including RAM limitations and software compatibility. You need to understand workstation operating systems, including Windows, Apple Macintosh OS, which don't even call it that anymore, or Linux. You need to understand cell phone/tablet operating systems, including Windows, Android, iOS, Chrome OS. You need to understand vendor-specific limitations, such as end-of-life and update limitations, and you need to understand the compatibility concerns between the operating systems. That's just one section of one domain that consists of 27% of the exam. Not that one section, but every section of this domain combined is 27%. I'm just scrolling through this entire section. We're still scrolling. All these bullets you see are in one single domain. We're still scrolling. We finished scrolling. Is that the end of it? Yes, it is. So it goes all the way up to section 1.9, where all these Linux command lines are and just tons of information we have to know. Lots in here. But if you can go through this entire exam objectives and go through every single one of these bullets, and you can highlight and go, yep, I know what that is. I know what that is. I know what that one is. I know what this is. I know that. I can explain this to you. I know what that is. I explain that to you. I know what this is. So if you can go through and check off everything on that list, then you're good. You're ready to take the exam. But you might come across this and go, oh, wait, proxy settings. What's that used for? I don't remember proxy settings. And where are those located? And why would I configure them? And what would they do for me? All right, circle that one. That's one I need to go back and learn before I book my exam. All right, let's keep going. Remote desktop connection, remote assistance, home versus work versus public network settings. So you need to understand all these. And it's a great place to go. If you're nervous about your exam, this will take away a lot of that nervousness because you've now stepped through every single one of these bullets. You understand exactly what's going to be expected of you when you walk into the room, and you know the content. If there's one you don't know, maybe there's a couple of topics in here you just never got around to. That's okay. 2 or 3 topics in this enormous list of topics, you're fine. There's a lot here. But you'll notice my videos follow exactly this format because of that. So I think that's an important one too. Question in the chat room. The questions that are not objectives that you get on the exam are competency questions not counted against you in the exam, correct? There have been times that people have said, whether this is right or wrong, because there is a candidate agreement you sign prior to taking this exam saying you're not going to say what you see on the exam. People have said, I got questions on my exam that were not part of the exam objectives. That does come up occasionally. Now, the real question, do those questions count? I don't know. CompTIA doesn't tell you. And you never know because they don't tell you at the end. They don't tell you in the middle or at the end of this exam whether those questions counted or not. There have been times in the past that CompTIA has put certain questions on the exam that clearly were outside the scope of the exam objectives. And the rumors are that those questions did not count towards your final score. But we don't know because CompTIA doesn't tell you if they count towards your final score or not. We just don't know. So that's one where you're just going to have to work on understanding the objectives and the things that are available, and then perhaps working your way. When you hit a question like that, you're looking at it and going, they're asking about Windows 12. That's not on the objectives. That's a situation where you do have to go through and figure it out. And I understand there is a disclaimer at the exam that says we could ask you anything. I gave you that. We just went through that. But you don't know how it's scored. And they don't tell you whether a question is going to be scored or not. So you don't know. My recommendation always is don't worry about the scoring. Just do the best you can with the questions they're asking, and you'll be okay. Someone also in the chat room, Mike's asking, currently studying for Security Plus with CertMaster Learn. Great. CertMaster Learn is a great tool with great questions. It has practice exams that say select all that apply where there could be 2 to 3 correct answers. Is this reflective of the exam? Well, for the current exam version, this could change at any time. CompTIA does not tend to ask questions that have multiple answers and not telling you how many of those answers you should be answering. In fact, there's not a lot of those questions to begin with. You don't get a lot of pick 2, pick 3, because that's what they'll do on the exam is they'll say, here's a question, pick 2 of the following. And they'll give you 6 options. You have to pick 2 of those. But they tell you have to pick 2. Or the question says you have to pick 3. There's not a lot of those. Most of the time on the exam, the questions are one of those multiple choice options, and that's it. You don't get a lot. In fact, you might get an exam with no questions asking you to pick 2 or 3. Maybe you get 1, maybe you get 2. There's not a lot. So don't worry so much of those. Now, those are great questions for learning because you really do have to parse it out and learn why you're choosing one or not choosing one. It's almost like having multiple questions in one question because you have to step through each one of those and make a decision. Do I add this one or not to the answers? Do I add this one or not to the answers? Do I add this one or not to the answers? You have to make that decision for every single one of the answers they provide. And then at the end, of course, they tell you if you chose right or not. But at least on the exam, you know how many, which does help, because it should just jump right out at you. Format of the questions on the exam is the first handful of questions you get will be performance-based questions, and the remaining questions on the exam are multiple choice. So if there are 90 questions on the exam, you might get 5 performance-based questions and 85 multiple choice, something like that. We'll have to see. You could get fewer than 90 questions, of course. 90 is the maximum, but you could get fewer than 90 as well. It's pretty useful. The questions in the chat room, and these do come up from time to time. Does the exam ask about a particular topic? Always, if you're wondering, does the exam ask about a particular topic, you should be going back to this. Every topic you need to know is listed in these objectives. And I'm going to take this another level with you and say, if it is not listed in these objectives, you do not need to spend any time studying it. If you walk into the exam and you know everything that is listed on all of these bullets for these exam objectives, and you know nothing else, all you know is these bullets, you're going to pass your exam. Bottom line, easy. You're not going to have a problem. But for those that are trying to go outside the scope, I see this in other training materials all the time, that there will be questions or topics that come up that aren't listed in these exam objectives. And they say, where can I get more information on this? I don't know. Why would you want more information on that? You should ignore that. Ignore everything that is not in this list. That's how focused you should be. Now, I realize, of course, that in the industry, when you get into a job, when you do this for a living, you're going to need to know a lot more than a bunch of bullets that are in one single document. Absolutely true. And there'll be plenty of time for you to learn those things. But the purpose of what we are doing, the reason we're talking right now, is because you're trying to pass this certification exam. And the best way to study for that exam is to stick to these bullets. You stick to the bullets, you'll be fine. In fact, you'll be better than fine. You're going to pass your exam. Bottom line. So that's the real key. I think that might help you too. I know this is in the chat room, I know in my college class, they don't focus on the objectives. They start from the beginning and go to the end. I don't know what that means, because it's the same thing. It doesn't matter what order you do the objectives in. You could start down here and go this direction. You go backwards if you want. I don't care. I don't care how you get all of these bullets in your brain. That didn't sound good. I don't care how you get all these topics memorized. But I do know that you should focus on these topics and nothing else. So that's the real key. I think that's where you should focus. And a lot of times, other books, other video courses, other classes you take, they follow a different path than what's listed in these exam objectives. And that's absolutely fine, as long as ultimately they cover everything that's in here. And sometimes the thing that the objectives start with and the order of the objectives may not be the most conducive to learning the material. Some authors and content providers feel that a different format or a different layout is a better way to learn. That's absolutely a good argument. I can't argue with that. So I would say, though, that ultimately just make sure that you can go through this list and check off every single one of these that you happen to know. That's the real key. I think that's where I go. Now, for those of you wondering, what is this thing that you're looking at on the screen? This is the CompTIA A+ Certification Exam Core 2 Objectives. These are the official objectives from CompTIA. directly. The best way to get your hands on these is professormesser.com/objectives, or just go to your favorite search engine, type in CompTIA exam objectives, and you'll find it. It'll take you right to the page. And they're free. They're free. Can't beat that. Absolutely free. If you go to my website, professormesser.com/objectives, type that in, you'll get this page that says, click here to be redirected to the exam objective page on the CompTIA website. So what should you do? You should click here to be redirected to the exam page on the CompTIA website. And it just takes you to this. You fill out their form. You say which one of these you'd like. You agree to the terms of use and privacy statement without even reading it, because that's how you are. And you click submit and you can get those. Nobody reads the terms of use and privacy statement. They should. I'm going to hide something in my terms of use or privacy statement one day, just to see how long it takes somebody to read through that and tell me out of those. It's hard to do. Hard to read through those. If you've ever had to, I had to have someone create a formal set of policy statements, terms of use, and put that on my website. Painful. First, I had to work with lawyers, already a problem. Secondly, it's lawyer talk, already a problem. Again, two problems right there. But we got through it. I survived. You can too. But I really do recommend. If you buy a voucher from my site, how long does it last? Does it expire? Yeah, the vouchers from my site are approximately 1 year. You know, sometimes I will buy an inventory of them. So yours might be 364 days or 363 days in length, but that's about it. You don't get much less than that on my sites. They last about a year. They're good for a year. And you have to not just use them in a year, you have to take your exam 1 year from purchasing those. So even though the expiration is there, you know, some people think, here's what I'll do. I'll buy the voucher, and the voucher retires. The voucher's expiring a year from now. Just before it expires, I'll book my exam, but then I will reschedule the exam to be a month from then, and then I'll just keep rescheduling to be another month down the line until I'm finally ready to take the exam. First, that's just awful planning. Don't do that. Secondly, it doesn't work that way. You have to finish the exam before the expiration date of the voucher. It's written in the voucher terms and conditions, just so you know. That's where that comes from. So you get a year. A year's plenty of time. You don't need to purchase a voucher until you're ready to take the exam anyway. And I think that although people come to my site and buy the vouchers, and they're buying the voucher at the beginning of their studies because they feel like it's a motivational thing. All right, clock is ticking, and I got to learn this and get this done because I bought the voucher and it only has so much time available on it. Okay, that is a reasonable way to push yourself. I have other people that will book the exam. They'll buy their voucher and book the exam, 3 months from now. And they're working towards that. And we all know that we can, I think 48 hours before the exam, we can change the date. We can push the date out if we want. We can change the scheduling of the exam. But knowing that it's there is something that helps motivate people sometimes. So I would recommend you do it too. It is a great way to motivate. How much is the voucher? I guess it depends on which voucher you're getting. The different vouchers are worth a different amount. If you go to professormesser.com/vouchers, you'll be able to see my voucher page. And I have all the vouchers here. You just pick the one you're taking. If you're taking A+, you can get the voucher prices for A+. They're currently at $215 a voucher US. There is also Security Plus worth a different amount. So you have to pay $343 for a Security Plus voucher. So there's different vouchers have different prices, but notice that the savings, the discount's already built in. You don't need anything special. You just get the discount. You get the exam hacks ebook, and I explain to you exactly the process and the terms of conditions on the voucher description page. It's all there, professormester.com/vouchers. I can help you. Plenty there. Taking your exam the last day of the voucher is bad as well. It probably is. It's just, at least you're taking it. So it's not awful. You're at least getting your voucher. You're using it. But perhaps there was a planning issue. Perhaps there was a challenge with the planning of the exam if you end up taking the exam on the last day that the voucher is valid. Something to think about. There's a whole process involved here of making sure you are optimizing this to have you in the best place, that when you walk into the exam, you are calm, you are cool, you are collected and ready to pass this exam. Don't push yourself or limit yourself to a particular time frame unless you know yourself that helps you. And for some people it does. So I don't want to get in the way of your process. If your process is about pushing yourself and making yourself, you're driving yourself and making yourself really push towards a certain date, do that. Find the way that works, because that I think is another valuable thing to consider. Well, this brings us to the end of a rare Friday study group. I'm glad we were able to do one here on the last day of the week before the weekend. Thanks for joining us. We have so many more study groups. We did an A+ Core 1 and Core 2 this week. Come back next week. We'd love you to show up on Wednesday of next week. We have another live event that is our Network Plus study group for the N10008. Those are always fun. For everyone else who's out there watching, thank you for joining us. We couldn't do this without you. Thank you for your continued support. This wouldn't be here without you. Have a great weekend. Thanks for joining us, everyone. We'll see you next time on the A+ Study Group.